We are ready to start. Greetings in Hotep ABSI family, and for those that are watching via Facebook and other platforms. Welcome to the Ujima collaboration from the National Association of Black Social Workers and the Association of Black Psychologists. We're pleased to present our third part series, The Pandemics of COVID-16-19 to COVID-19, Healing Through Ujima, Part 3, The Complexities of Racial Trauma. This particular virtual gathering will focus on racial trauma and its form of race-based stress for referring to Black people's reactions to dangerous events, real and perceived experiences of racial discrimination. Such experiences, as we know, may include threats of harm and injury, humiliation, shame, and even witnessing racial discriminations toward other Black people. Racial trauma is unique in that it involves ongoing, individualized, and collective injuries due to exposure and re exposure to race based stress. Today, we have an awesome, and when I say awesome, I mean an awesome panel that has been assembled to address these complexities of racial trauma that we experience. But before we begin, I just want to provide a little brief overview of both the National Association of Black Social Workers and the Association of Black Psychologists. The National Association of Black Social Workers was created during the 1960s civil rights movement on May 8, 1968, in San Francisco, California, by a group of Black social workers who were convened for the National Conference on Social Welfare, the largest professional social work organization at the time. This group of Black social workers disengaged from that meeting to form what is ultimately known or have become the foremost advocacy of group established to address social issues and concerns, the National Association of Black Social Workers. These Black social workers ultimately became the founders of the overall International Association of Black Social Workers. Before May 8, 1968, several social work related advocacy groups comprised of African ancestry had been addressing issues of racism and poverty in America. Their common goal was Black liberation, racial equality, and self determination to improve the welfare and service delivery. They recognized the need for educational institutions to revamp curricula and to move more effectively to educate and inform ethical and cultural competent practice. Since 1969, NABSW has sponsored an annual convention that addresses issues of social work service delivery, education, research, and alternative ideals of improving communities in America and people of African ancestry. The Association of Black Psychologists. In 1968, a group of early, mid, and seasoned career psychologists and students took a decisive stand to change their professional engagement with the American Psychological Association. This monumental decision was born out of a long-standing struggles, resulting in a conscious awareness that we must define our reality as Black psychologists and establish solutions necessary to confront the vestiges of individual, systemic, and institutionalized racism and psychological oppression. So, over the past 52 years, ABSI did exactly this by establishing an organizational platform that supports culturally relevant ideals, scholarship, research, practice, and leadership. The ABSI, the Association of Black Psychologists, has energized women and men toward an activism and continues to culturally transform the field of psychology. A few of the contributions that ABSI includes removing biased educational testing, addressing the gross inequities in medical, Medicare, Medicaid, and coverage affecting patients in public mental hospitals, addressing fairness in housing, and addressing educational decision making. Additionally, ABSI has also been decisive in generating instructional programs and policies that can be seen through the Journal of Black Psychology and establishing new journals, the Psychological Discourse, consultation and collaboration with civil rights organizations and the Congressional Black Caucus, providing a platform to address cultural and psychological issues impacting prison industrial complex, mental health initiatives, cultural competence for disaster relief, and first responders. ABSI's mission is the liberation of African mind, the empowerment of African character, and the enlivenment and illumination of the African spirit. As you can see, these are two associations that have been dedicated to the lives of Black people. And we're glad that they have been able to partner together to form this Ujima collaboration. With a little bit about the history of NABSW and ABSI, we're going to now open up with our drumming interlude and libations. This is an African tradition that we practice at every particular gathering of the family. To lead us in the drumming interlude will be Baba Cedric, and our libations will be done by Okofu Omunu.
Thank you. Greetings to everyone. Before I begin to drum, it's important for me to explain why drumming is important. Drumming is the heartbeat and the pulse of any life force, of anything that takes place. The heart has a pulse, it has a beat. So does ABSI and all the other professionals who are here today. Not just because what you're giving is the pulse of life that helps to bring solidarity and strength to what it is that we do, but it's also to make certain that what it is that we give from our heart, that it continues to pulse and beat throughout our communities. It's extremely important that we understand that everything has a foundation, such as that from the hand clap, from the feet, from the voice, from the laughter. It has a heartbeat, it has a pulse. And so we want you to understand why drumming is significant. It's ours culturally and it's played at any significant meeting, gathering, baby naming ceremonies, and such as that with ABSI. I'll now bring to you traditional drumming. Thank you very much.
Aquaba Hotel Edison. My name is Akomfo Olufemi Shepsu, and I represent the mighty Richmond chapter of the National Association of Black Social Workers. I'm an Akomfo or a priest in the Akan tradition that was brought here by the late great Nana Yao in the Zulu in the late 1960s. And my empire or libation is going to really represent the maroonage and the resistance aspect of African people resisting white supremacy here in the West. Libation is a very ancient process and ritual that literally binds us and connects us with our ancestors. And it's really the act of really reawakening our ancestral DNA. And this is not a ceremony or ritual of trying to proselytize. So you want to be able to respect everyone else's particular religious or spiritual or journeys they may be on. But we're going to be using Empaye or libation specifically to call out those ancestors that and also those universal forces that have never left us on this side of the water. So as I start my Empaye or my libation, I'll be speaking in the language of tree that comes from the Akan people of Ghana, West Africa. In the middle of the Empaye or the libation, I want all the panelists, all the participants to call out your family ancestors and our national heroes in that order. Then once you conclude doing that, then I will call upon all of the Maroons, the outliers, all of the Africans that resisted white supremacy here in North, Central, South America, and then I will proceed on with the prayer. Is everybody with me? When I say I go, you say I may. Oh yes, and I'll be pouring libation at my shrine. I'm pretty sure everyone on here has heard of Sankofa. But Nana Sankofa is one of the Albasum, and in the Akan tradition, we call our deities the Albasum. Nana San is one of our Albasum. He's a history deity. He's a war deity and an ancestral deity, and he was used primarily with Nana Ya Santua during her fight against the British in the Nana Ya Santua wars in Ghana. Candomblé. I go.
I know.
Yung poem 20 poem Kwame inside. A Sasiyan inside. A Serdi Benson on. Wadaromo. Kofi oh, Escatel was sitting on. Ticket Benson on. Kumi inside. Obukwesi inside. Medicine Kof inside. Dilsian inside. Bui Benson on. Shango Shagudi inside. Agun inside. Sua Duswa. Koframati Al. A certain Yosicom. A Sua Abner. A Sua Minimanu. A Sua Bontang. A Sua Chipma. Nana Kosi. Nana Iago, Nana Kwesi Kokiko, a City Donsu, City Frida, Nana Parabia, Nana Yadina Zulu inside, a Kwesi Panyin inside. At this time, call out your ancestors and our national heroes at this time, and do it loudly with power and vigor. Inside. And you also can type them into the chat portion on this meeting. Inside. Not unknown named and unnamed. Not unknown of all the Africans that resisted white supremacy and domination. We say Madasi Pa to the Africans that survived the beheadings, the lynchings, the burnings, the boilings, the castrations, the Africans that were tarred and feathered, the women that were raped, the men that were buck broken and had to buck dance, the Africans that were on the bottom of the slave ships, lying in their own piss, their own shit, their own vomit, the dead bodies, the malaria, the Africans that resisted by jumping overboard over the side of the slave ships, the mothers that killed their children so they would not endure the hardship and the confusion and torture on the plantations and on the slave ships. We call all the Africans that resisted white supremacy and domination, all those Maroons, all the outliers, the Maroons in Maryland, the Maroons in Virginia, the Maroons in South Carolina, in North Carolina, in Georgia, in Florida, in Alabama, in Mississippi, in Louisiana, in Texas, in Arkansas, in Oklahoma, in Missouri, in Kansas, in Tennessee, in Kentucky, in West Virginia, the Africans that resisted in Puerto Rico, in Haiti, in Jamaica, in Grenada, in Barbados, in Trinidad, the Africans that resisted the Portuguese, the Brits, the British, the Dutch, the French, the Spanish, in Belize, in Mexico, in Nicaragua, in Costa Rica, in Guatemala, the Africans that resisted in Panama, they resisted in Suriname, in Guyana, in French Guiana, in Uruguay, in Paraguay, in Colombia, in Bolivia, in Ecuador, in Chile, in Peru, in Argentina, in Brazil. We call upon all of the African warriors, all the Africans who led the Quilombos, the Maroon leaders that resisted the Portuguese, the Brits, the French, the Dutch, and the Spanish. We call out their names. Yanga Yanga, Gonga Zumba, Francois McKendale, Cecily Fatima, Hugo Bookman, Desilanis, Nanny, Cujo, Johnny, Acapone, Nana King Bayano, Mumbo Marionette. We call upon all of our great African scholars and thinkers who dedicated their life works to African liberation and sovereignty. We call out Baba Asa Hilliard,
Wait a minute.
Kobe Cambone, Neely Fuller, Bobby Wright, Nana Francis Scott Wilson, Chancellor Williams, Sheikh Onta Dio, Amos Wilson inside, Usilla Dungy Houston inside, J.A. Rogers, George G.M. James, John Jackson, Carter G. Woodson. We call out all of our Maroon leaders and sovereignty leaders here on this side of the water in America. We call about the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Martin Luther King, Omar Wiley, Malcolm X, Fannie Lou Hamer, Mary McLeod Bethune, Rosa Parks, Sojourner Truth, Nana Adderby Wells. Again, we call upon Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, Gabriel Prosser, Denmark Vesey, and again, all the Africans who fought white supremacy on this side of the water. This is a Comfort Kwabena Friend poem, also known as the Comfort Olufemi Shepsu, coming on behalf of our mighty organizations, saying Madasi Pa for this very powerful assembly. We ask that you give our panelists the strength and the power to continue to do their work, to allow them to be able to contextualize the virus of white supremacy and domination. Allow us as an African people to be able to use our mass, our culture, our mass, to be able to filter out white supremacy and domination. We ask that you allow us to be able to contact trace, to be able to use social distancing to keep ourselves away from white supremacy and domination, and to be able to use the culture of the God, the Shona, the Kikuyu, the Manding, the Malinke, all those ancient formations, to be able to heal the anxieties, the depressions, the bipolar disorder, the hypertension, the diabetes, all of those ailments that come from white supremacy and domination. And we finally ask, Nana, that you empower us as an African people to be able to bring back traditional African culture in its most complete, its most uncompromised, in its most unadulterated form. We say Madasi, 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 Madasi be yo. Madasi Pa. Nana Sankofa is here with us today. He says, Madasi Pa for the work. The struggle is going to continue, and we must use re Africanization and all of our tools that are at our disposal, that are thousands of years old, to be able to heal these wounds and to be able to recreate our culture and our image with our power for complete sovereignty for African people throughout the entire diaspora. Madasi Bio.
Ashe, Ashe.
Ashe and Medisa Pa. We now will have the Black National Anthem sung by Baba Cedric.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trot, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over the way with the tears have been watered. We have come trending our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last where the white gleam of our bright stars is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, though who has brought us thus far on the way, though who has by thy might lead us into the light, keep us forever in thy path, we pray. Least our feet stray from the place, our God, where we meet thee. Least our hearts drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land. And as the words continue on the screen, please reflect your hearts, your minds, and your spirit to this moment of solidarity, as we recognize this conference, as we recognize the commitment of the people and the work that has gone forward, the legacy, the past, from yesterday, today, in the present, and forevermore.
Thank you. Just to have a quick moment there. On August the 12th, the Association of Black Psychologists witnessed the transition of one of our founders, elders, and past president, Dr. Robert L. Williams, or some would affectionately call Dr. Bob. He served as the second president of the National Association of Black Psychologists from 1969 to 1970. A stalwart in the field of African and Black psychology, we honor this good and beloved son, brother, husband, father, and friend. Dr. Benson Cook will come and provide a celebration of Dr. Williams' life. Dr. Cook is the past president and current historian for the association, and we will now listen to the celebration of life of Dr. Baba Williams.
Thank you. Celebration of life. We will never forget, and how can we forget, that we were graced by a powerful Black man with his deep melodic voice, standing 6'4". Dr. Robert L. Williams, born February 20th, 1930, in Little Rock, Arkansas. He became our ancestor on August 12th, 2020, a husband and a father of 8 children. Dr. Williams was many things to many people. He was a giant of Black psychology, a founder, past president of ABPSI, elder, leader, griot, distinguished psychologist, mentor, jegna, colleague, and friend of the Association of Black Psychologists and all healers who are concerned about our people. His strength, courage, and intellect have now joined the pantheon of our ancestors. His legacy of scholarship will forever provide the scaffolding around which we must continue to empower our people. One of his favorite quotes was from Marcus Garvey. He shared this countless times and included it in his writings, especially his book, The History of the Association of Black Psychologists. The quote is, "Men do not build for others, they build for themselves." What are you going to expect, that the white men are going to build up America and elsewhere and hand it over to us? End of quote. In this book, he described his transformation from what he described as a Negro to a Black man following the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In an excerpt, he stated, "Many factors led to my developing feelings of racial pride and for Black consciousness. Although I had not been too active in the civil rights movement, Dr. King's death had an enormous impact on me that transformed me from a Negro to a Black man." A brief list of his many landmark contributions are as such: of course, an administrator, a professor of psychology, a 68 co-founder of the Association of Black Psychology, in 69, a developer of the Black Intelligence Test for Cultural Homogeneity, which was in an article, Danger, Testing and Dehumanizing Black Children. In 1970, after resigning as chief psychologist of a VA hospital and joining the faculty of Washington University, he became a full professor. Well, he also became the director of African American Studies, and in many instances played a crucial role in developing the curriculum that would become a model for Black studies nationwide. And in doing this, he basically searched out and he found a grant for $1 million. And for the next 12 years with that $1 million grant, he used it to fund approximately 110 African American grad students earning their master's degree in psychology. 20% of which went on to earn their doctorates in psychology. In 1973, he coined the term Ebonics as a language to be used as a bridge to teach standard English. In 1974, he contributed the first documentation of the history of our association in the first volume, #1 issue of the Journal of Black Psychology. August 1974, titled A History of the Association of Black Psychologists, Early Formation and Development. In 1980, as a distinguished visiting professor at the University of Texas in Austin, he wrote his second book, The Collective Black Mind, toward an Afrocentric theory of Black personality. So over the next few years, based upon the foundation of his work, he would appear on many numerous TV programs. In fact, his Black intelligence test was used as a theme of an episode of the TV program Good Times. He appeared on programs such as the Dan Rather Primetime Saturday Night to discuss the IQ myth, Bill Donahue, Montel Williams, and many others. His articles and writings were sought out by the New York Times, Washington Post, LA Examiner, Chicago Tribune, People Magazine, Newsweek, and many others. In 2000, he contributed to the book Larry P. Revisited, IQ Testing of African Americans. In 2007, he wrote a book, Racism, Learned at an Early Age Through Racial Scripting. In 2008, he contributed the article in the 40th anniversary issue of the Journal of Black Psychology, A 40-Year History of the Association. In 2008, he completed a historic book titled History of the Association of Black Psychology, Profiles of Outstanding Black Psychologists. And in 2018, Raising Black Kids to Be Okay. Now, for those who may not know of him, or those who want to be introduced to that melodic, deep, baritone-based voice, I ask you to go to YouTube and look at one of the videos that A.B. Sy produced as a part of our DVD archive project, filmed by Dr. Hal Fairchild. In it, you'll see him talk about his thoughts about our reaching our 40th anniversary. And there's a particular piece of information that he shared that I think is critical. He talked about how prior to that time, Dr. Thomas Parham asked him, Dr. Williams, do you believe that the A.B. Sy would last 40 years? In his response, he said, yes, Tom, we've lasted 40 years because we are doing the right thing at the right time for the right people. And we're going to last more than 40 more years as long as we remember to do that. His talk on that video was titled, And Still We Rose, inspired by the poem by Maya Angelou, And Still I Rise. In his presentation, he discussed the motivation behind a lot of his later work, which is looking at the strengths of our people through all that we've endured. His confidence in us was heartfelt, and he helped encourage us as members of the Association of Black Psychologists. As our ancestor now, we should continue to seek his strength, his energy, and his kindness. We must sustain his commitment to the struggle of our people by lifting up our association and other like associations. So to our beloved brother, Dr. Robert L. Williams, we love you, we miss you, we will remember you. And as you made it clear, we are the ones that we've been waiting for to define our reality as Black psychologists and Black healers. I thank you.
And now to honor Baba Williams, Barbara Cedric will do a drumming interlude. Medise Pa. Thank you. Thank you, Baba Cedric. So now we're going to have our opening meditation. For many of you, the power and the stillness of the mind is a powerful attribute that we as a people know and know well. To lead us in our open meditation, to provide this stillness of mind and to prepare us for the conversation that is to come, Dr. Robin Austin will lead us in a meditation activity.
Namaste, Hotep, peace. I'd like to begin by asking the question, why do we meditate? We meditate because it heals, but it belongs to us as well. We began meditating years and years ago, like 6,000 years before they meditated in China, before they meditated in India. So it's important for us to reclaim this very, very powerful art, this sacred practice, because to meditate means to heal. And so what more powerful practice could we have than to reclaim it and to start healing? If you look at the research, you'll find out that there's a lot of studies about stress being carried on through the genes and changing us on a DNA level. Well, I believe also the converse of that, that if we start healing, we can also change on a DNA level. And so that healing begins with tuning inward. Our ancestors recognized that. Even Ptah Hotep recognized that when he wrote the book. You know, it's important for us to understand that meditation isn't a form that we see, but it's the ability to reflect and to go inward, to raise to higher consciousness. And so when we look at our civilization, we also look at the Haru consciousness, that ability to travel to a level where we become enlightened. So as warriors, this is part of what we're supposed to do. We're spiritual warriors. We're physical warriors. But how do we relax the mind? How do we calm the nervous system? How do we become peaceful inside as well? So let's take a moment to close our eyes, to connect to our breath, because our breath, where our mind goes, our breath goes. If our mind is agitated, our breath will be agitated. So we're just going to close our mind and take a deep breath in and take a deep breath out. The deeper we can relax, the better we feel. The better we feel, the deeper we will relax. And so we're going to, again, focus on the breath right now. Find the breath, feel the breath, and focus on the breath. I can't tell you how important this is, because along with all of the stress that we're dealing with, we're also dealing with cultural stress. We're dealing with racial stress. We're dealing with trauma. And so we must begin to find a way to heal. There are many ways that we have, but meditation is our way as well. As I said, our ancestors meditated to tune inward. So let's take this time to draw the breath in and to inhale completely and to exhale completely. To inhale deeply and to exhale deeply. To bring some fresh energy into the body. And as we exhale, to put down, to let go of any tension that we may be holding on to. Conscious tension, as well as unconscious tension. We're going to begin to focus on the crown of our head. I'm going to take a deep breath in and just feel the surface of the head. When we're at the crown of the head, we're also at the highest level of energy. We want to make sure that there's no blockage in the crown of our head. And we're going to focus that energy on the back of the head. We're going to become aware of the ears. We're going to become aware of the back of the head. We're going to become aware of our face, making sure that our eyes, our jaw, our cheeks, our lips are softened. Open your mouth wide and then relax it. Remember to breathe in. As you breathe in, feel the belly expand. As you exhale, feel the belly contract. Feel that deep diaphragmatic breathing, relaxing your nervous system. And now we're going to travel to the back of the neck, to the front of the neck. Be aware of the back of the neck, the front of the neck. We're in the energy center known as the Vishuddhi or the throat chakra. When we're talking a lot and we're speaking a lot, we want to make sure that energy is open. It allows us to speak our truth, to communicate. The color is blue. So see if you can imagine a light color blue. Now, I want you to be mindful of how you're sitting. Be mindful that you're sitting with both of your sit bones on the floor or on a chair, but just so that you're comfortable, that your spine is erect, elongated, that your shoulders are relaxed. As we take this journey, we're going to continue to travel down the body. We started from the highest energy and we're going downward. We're going to turn the palms of our hands up, or we can keep the palms of our hands in our lap. The right palm on top of the left palm. Just imagine as we're sitting, our ancestors practicing quietly, calming the mind, reducing the stress. They say for every problem, there's a solution. For every obstacle, there's an answer. So we want to take this moment to feel the answers. And now we're going to become aware of the shoulders. Draw your shoulders up to your ears and then relax them down your back. Feel that release of any tension in your shoulders. And now as we enter the heart, as we know our ancestors saw the heart as a symbol of the mind, I want to take this moment to really open the heart by drawing the shoulders back. The color here is green. So see if you can imagine or visualize a green light. Take a moment here to feel, to sense, to see that green light. And here is where we begin to love ourselves, love our people, love who we are. It's here that we begin to feel compassion. It's here that we begin to even forgive, forgiving ourselves, forgiving others. Open your heart. Take a moment here. Breathe into the heart. And as you exhale, let go of any toxicity that may be on your heart, any stress, any tightness. And as we go further down into the body, we are coming to the belly, the stomach, the solar plexus. This is the energy of doing. It's the energy of I do. Solus, the sun. Here we really want to be able to inhale and feel that expansion in the belly. Place your hands on your belly if you can with your thumb right at your navel. The rest of your hands covering your belly. And inhale. Inhale a little deeper. Inhale a little deeper. And then as you exhale, feel your thumb, feel your navel going all the way back towards the spine. Realizing that Ashe is the ability to do, willpower. We want to inhale again and feel that energy. The color here is yellow, like the sun. We want to reclaim our wellness system. We want to reclaim our power. We want to continue to inhale and to exhale. With each one of these systems, we also have an endocrine gland, a biological attachment. So when we're working with our spiritual body, we're also working with our physical body. So as we continue this journey, we're going right below the solar plexus into the sacral or the sacred area, our reproductive system, our system of creativity, our system of self-love, our system of self-esteem. The color here is orange. We want to take a few moments here and just feel that energy opening up, not only from the front, but from the back. Knowing and feeling and sensing our own creativity. And so now we arrive at what is considered the groundedness. We have to realize that we belong here, grounding ourselves. The color is red. And we want to begin to ground ourselves into the world and know that we are here. I am. To let go of the fear, to let go of the confusion. We have to open up the energy centers. And so this guided meditation is intended for us to be well, to be healed, to be happy. So I want to take a few moments and we want to take a breath in through the nose, into the chest, and into the abdomen. And then we want to exhale from the abdomen, from the chest to the nose. So take a few moments here and feel that breath coming in and coming out. And as you do, feel your Haru consciousness arising. Feel your sense of being a super being. Realize that Sankofa is about going back and fetching. And what are we fetching? We're fetching our ability to heal. So again, let's breathe in some fresh energy. And let's exhale and release and let go of any tension, any stress, any pain, any suffering. I want to thank you very much as we bring our palms together. Continue to take care of yourself. May you be well. May you be conscious. Hotep, namaste.
Medisipat, thank you very much, Dr. Alston. Well, will proceed to the main portion of our virtual gathering. When our president of the Association of Black Psychologists and I had a conversation, Dr. Theopia Jackson, he was like a kid in a candy store, wanting the opportunity to be able to moderate a panel with 4 geniuses that we have as far as throughout the African diaspora. So today she will be our moderator and leader with this outstanding panel. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Theopia Jackson, president of the Association of Black Psychologists.
Thank you so much, Hotep, and greetings, family. Yes, a kid in a candy store. I am so excited about the conversation we're going to be having today as a family with our Black genius, our Black scholars, our Black leaders in the space and time who have collectively raised up many generations and are still raising us. So welcome to all of those who are joining us through Facebook Live and also those who've joined us through the Zoom space at this particular time. When you are with us in the Zoom space, as a gentle reminder, please do remain on mute as this is being recorded. As we engage in this conversation today, there will be an opportunity where I will invite questions strategically from Facebook as well as Zoom to engage in moving us forward. Without further ado, because I am excited to kind of get us going here, I'm going to invite Baba Edwin Nichols to introduce very briefly his Jagni, our guest, Dr. Joy DeGruy. And then we will say a little something about each of our panelists and have them tell us more about who they are and why they are in the context of Black psychology. Baba Edwin Nichols.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. I'm very honored to talk about Joy DeGruy. I want to say that Joy understood the functionality of philosophy. When I present my paradigm on the philosophical aspects of cultural difference, people see it, but they don't always understand that philosophy has a functionality, and that was her genius, that she understood it. She conducted an experiment that corroborated the concept of a Black axiology. That is, that the highest value lies in the relationship between people. So she took a classroom of emotionally disturbed children with the intent of modifying their behavior. And the Black axiology was her dependent variable to enhance the relationship between pupils and teachers to accomplish the goal of success with these students. It worked. Her ability to apply philosophical constructs in a pragmatic way revealed to me her genius. As she went on to work for her master's in clinical psychology, she was successful. But when she presented her topic for her dissertation, she terrorized the people to such a degree that they gave her a terminal degree and asked her to try to do her doctorate someplace else, which she did, and quite successfully. So I'm very close to her. I'm very proud of her. And I share with you the great knowledge and wisdom that she brings to the experience of Black people through our Black psychology. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols, who's also a founder and past president for the Association of Black Psychologists. So once again, you're seeing the deepness of our thoughts and lineages as we're growing up as scholars. I also want to acknowledge President Melissa Haley, who is the president for the National Association of Black Social Workers, who has partnered with us in these series of conversations around Ujima, collective works and responsibility, as we are locking our arms together and bearing clear on our foundational knowledge as people of African ancestry to move our folks through these pandemics, the nexus of the COVID-19 and the racial pandemic that we are enduring at this time. As our leaders have taught us, and I consider myself to still be a student of Black psychology, we have everything we need to do what we need to do as we move forward. We just have to be very clear to step into it and utilize it. And that is my hope and wish as we continue in our conversations today, that we will deepen the knowledge of those who already understand that and feed those who are just waking up to the realities that Black psychology, African-centered approaches exist, and they are exactly what we need to do what we need to do. So again, thank you for the National Association of Black Social Workers for joining us in this endeavor. We have with us today Brother Jerome, who is from the NSBW, and I want to acknowledge his work as first and foremost as a fellow bison, which is a beautiful thing to hold on to. And also he is the author of a book that's entitled Human Services and African-Centered Approaches. He is a chair of the PhD program in School of Social Work at Morgan State University, another HBCU, so I'm excited what he'll be bringing to our conversation. And of course, it was intentional to have our elders to be acknowledged at the end here in the sense of Dr. Patricia Newton being here, who I'm so excited. I'm almost speechless here to be in this conversation, whose work is phenomenal. And she is a member of and CEO for the Black Psychiatrists of America, which is a institution or a group that many folks do not even know exists, just like the Association of Black Psychologists and our National Association of Black Social Workers, that people need to know that we are here, and that's what this is for. I'm going to ask her to introduce herself, say hello to the village, and what she'd like to share about who she is and what she hopes to bring to this conversation as we think about racial trauma. Nana Newton? I think you're on mute, Nana Newton. Yes, you're on mute.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Ah, wonderful. Well, thank you, Sister Ethiopia and the members of ABSI as well as NABSW, who I've had long associations with both organizations. And we, like ABSI, we're a year younger than you. We're celebrating 51st year, and I know this is your 52nd year. And like ABSI, we came about in existence in 1969 as part of that whole civil rights agenda, when Black psychiatrists who were members of the American Psychiatric Association became disenfranchised and frustrated with the way psychiatry was being practiced in the United States of America, and created this organization that continues to be in its existence. I am anxious to be a part of this dialogue with these great people who are a part of it, and to reason, as they say, together how we can, one, resolve our differences and increase our ability to not only survive, but to thrive mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And of course, you know, my background is in medicine, and I was, how can I say, nurtured in this process by two leading Black psychiatrists that everyone must know. That's Dr. Alice Galate, who made our transition earlier this year in April, and Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, who made our transition in 2016. As you know, I was on my way to becoming a surgeon. And when I met up with Dr. Welsing, being introduced by Dr. Galati, after about a 3-hour conversation, she said, "Oh, my dear, you're not a cutter, you're a thinker." And so the rest is history. And so I'm delighted to be a part of looking at solving the problems, coming up with the solutions, and in the context of love and appreciation for our brothers and sisters.
Thank you, Asante Sana. And then, of course, without further ado, I also want to introduce my Baba, my Jegna. I know I share him with many, known and unknown to us. Baba Wade Nobles, would you greet the family?
Okay. Welcome, family. I hope I do not embarrass myself with this technology. I'm better with living things than with mechanical things. I am very glad to be here. I am one of those, I guess I should tell this story. I am a baby daddy of ABSI. I am one of the co-founders, and I was present when folks like Bob Williams and other Black psychologists were at an APA convention in San Francisco. And I was a student at San Francisco State. And I was told by my white professor to go to APA and be a gopher. And he told me that was a technical term, to be a gopher. It meant that you go for this, you go for that, you get this, you stand in the presence of all these great white people and go get what they need to do their job. I was newly married. I should say as a footnote that Abisai is my mistress, and Abisai has been with me as long as my wife has been with me, and we have grown together. But at this convention, I knew that I had a new wife at home, that I wasn't concerned about this white psychologist give me extra credit, even though I thought I was needing it. And so I made a strategic decision. I would go to the convention, I would make sure my white professor saw me, and then I would walk through the door and go back home to my wife. And as I was walking through the door, I saw these black people standing by a bar, and they were cussing, and they were cussing. And I said, wait a minute, these are my kind of people. And so I walked over to them. I'm a student. I walked over, got close to them, and you know, Bob Williams' booming voice. And they were saying they're tired of these white folks telling all these strange theories about us. I'm tired of this stuff, and we need to do something about it. And they said, well, let's go to someone's room and let's figure it out. And we went to this room, and I'm looking at the clock. I'm trying to get on to my wife and my new baby. I'm looking at these folks, these black psychologists were talking. I ain't seen but 2 black psychologists at San Francisco all my life. So now there's about 8 or 9 or 10 of them. So I'm ear hustling. They were in this room, they were cussing, and someone said, go get some wine. Someone said, go get some chicken. And they started eating chicken and drinking wine and cussing even more. And then finally they said, we should file a petition to APA and ask for them to give us a division where we can appeal to them about these strange theories. And it was the students, me one of them, who said, we don't need to file a petition. We should have our own association. We should have our own association. And we struggled at about 3 o'clock in the morning. We finally agreed that we're going to have an association. So the seeds of ABSI was planted in a room in San Francisco where a group of mostly new career professionals who were afraid about losing their jobs, but had the courage to stand up anyway and said, we're going to start an association of Black psychologists. And so the next day we gathered again and we said, we're going to have an association of Black psychologists, but we don't have a Black psychology. We're going to have an association of something that does not exist. And we went to work. And we went to work. And all of us began to do the work of creating the ideas and the theories and the beliefs and the counter, the challenge of white theories. And that was the roots of ABSI, linked to not just breaking away from APA, but distancing ourselves from the science of white psychology and taking the courage and the ability to create our own science that we would stand on and use that as the healing balm for our people. So I'm glad to see folk here. Everyone here, I think I know. Everyone here, I'm glad to talk with, because this is family business. Let me say it again. This is family business. And so we should talk as family and love as family.
Thank you so much, Baba. So what has brought us here today is this conversation around the idea of, the idea of racial trauma and what that means in our community. And we do know that Sister Joy has been credited with bringing in conversation around this idea of post-traumatic slave disorder. And we'll talk more about that as well. But to kind of help set the stage for today, I'm going to share a brief video, and I'm going to ask and invite each of the panelists to share their thoughts when they think about what is racial trauma and what does this clip show for them. So I'm going to share my screen in just a moment here, as this has moved along before it's supposed to. Okay, let's hold this. Thank you for your patience. And pull my volume up as well.
Is that we're breathing. The pulse of Black America is that we're breathing. This system, this society weathers us before we even come out of the womb because it weathers our parents' nervous system. There is a constant influx of cortisol and adrenaline in order to deal with this stuff. And so what we know is that toxic stress impacts every system of the body. When stuff like this happens, it is not just the grief of watching that brother be destroyed. It is the 400 years of grief that was never addressed. My son is learning how to drive, and it's terrifying me. It's terrifying me, and it's terrifying my wife, that he's gonna be out here. And I won't be with him. I'm sorry. If somebody did something to him, I would lose it. This can't go on. White people have to get their act together. This has to stop. This has to stop. I can't see another body. I can't watch the whole thing. I can't watch that. It's re-wounding and it's re-traumatizing. I can't do that. But if they do something to my baby, I'm done. I'm holding a lot of nervous systems right now, but it's hard. I'm not sleeping. You know, I keep going from sadness to grief to a tremendous amount of rage.
Thank you. So let me just start here with you, Brother Jerome. What comes up for you when our dear brother talks about 400 years of grief and this idea of racial trauma? Can you speak to me about what does that mean, particularly as a social worker, and what you've seen and understood in your work?
Well, it means it means hell right here on earth. I mean, that's essentially to me what it means. It's a persistent hell on earth. You know, and so I kind of liken it to a perpetual coffin that we wear around our necks that literally sends many of us to an early death. And so as we think about it, I think that we have to understand that this is the supreme form of injustice of humanity. And it is not, you know, people often say that European slavery and American slavery is the original sin, but it is the original trauma. And so for me, I think about all of the potential in our people that has just not been demonstrated. I think about all of the children who are born and there's so much hope and glimmer in their eyes. And then as cumulative disadvantage occurs because of white supremacy over time, that inspiration and that glimmer of hope begins to dim and turn into a deep sense of pessimism and despair. So it is hell on earth, Sister Ethiopia. This is how I describe
Beautiful. I
hell
appreciate
on
that.
earth for Black people. Yes.
I appreciate that. And Nana Newton, how would you talk about the quote science behind this hell on earth in terms of its impact on our nervous systems and who we are as human beings?
Well, this is a continual problem. We are not dealing with anything that is post. We're dealing with compound complex trauma that is continual through generations. And not only is it affecting our nervous system, it affects the entire integrity of our body. We know that with epigenetic studies that we now have had changes in various aspects of our genome in terms of expressions of certain kinds of conditions. And so what we see is a tremendous effect on mind, body, and spirit. We have the hormonal changes. We also have now structural changes in the brain where we can actually see through functional MRI and other techniques that we are seeing now changes in dendrites. Those are the little arms that go out and connect one neuron, one cell to another. Those become shortened, particularly around the telomeres, the ends of those cells. We also know that trauma affects something called the hippocampus, and that is in the limbic system, where we all have our memory and our anxieties and our responses to the environment stored. And we see that people who have been traumatized repeatedly have a decrease in the function of and even the size of the hippocampus, which means that there becomes some kind of a reaction formation that is different than normal. You know, we do have the fight flight mechanisms, but we're not supposed to be dealing with those 24/7, 365, which is what African people have been subjected to. And so with that dynamic, what we're seeing is the brain's attempt to eradicate and put into some kind of formulation the ability to control that. So we end up getting what we call neural cement. We get stuck and we cannot transfer sometimes the data that we should from other portions of our brain to the frontal lobe, which is indeed, I call the CEO of the brain, so that sometimes the decisions that we make are not necessarily in our own best self-interest. And so we see us beginning to behave in behaviors like substance use disorders and other kinds of dynamics that are pathological to the system as a result and a reaction to continual, perpetual trauma over a sustained period of time. We also see that the effects that that trauma has in one generation then begins to manifest itself in symptomatology up to 7 generations going forward as a result of this epigenetic transfer of memory. So we see an entire human organism being affected at mind, at body, and spirit. And so sometimes even the way we worship, even when the sister was going through when Dr. Austin was going through the meditation experience, some of our people are not able to fully engage in that experience simply because of the fact that they cannot have those connectivities that should be working effectively. I'll just stop there. There's a whole lot more I can add,
Yes,
but I think that's
yes.
a good place to stop.
Absolutely. I appreciate the wisdom that you're dropping down for us here to be very clear about this idea that we can get stuck because it changes it. So what can be happening to us is not what's wrong with us, but it can be the reason for why certain behaviors show up. So I want to bring in Sister Joy here. Dr. Joy, so can you talk to me too about, first of all, how you conceptualize racial trauma, but more specifically, it's been my observation that sometimes people may misunderstand or misinterpret when you talk about post-trauma slave disorder, and particularly when we hear what both Brother Jerome and Nana Newton are reminding us is that this is persistent trauma. So how do you understand racial trauma, and how can you correct that disconnect of what you're trying to convey to the people?
I think that basically looking at the etiology. So after, and again, I got to definitely acknowledge those folks like Dr. Newton and of course, Baba Nobles and Dr. Nichols, upon whose shoulders I stand. Let me just say that right now. But when I started to embark upon it, and of course I call it a syndrome, part of what I wanted to do was look at what I was seeing in my own community, family, and world. I needed to get a sense of understanding about some things that just wasn't making sense to me. And that started when I was very young. So how I ended up with post-traumatic slave syndrome actually began my journey living in the skin. I grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up at a time where I was listening to my dad, who was a Mason, called himself an Asiatic Black man before Black is beautiful. My dad was very clear about those kinds of things. And so I was kind of secure about my Blackness. What I didn't understand is why my friends, my peers, we assaulted each other with our Blackness, where we would say, you Black, fill in the blank, you Black, the added insult designed to hurt you. And even as a child, that didn't sit right with me, because you are Black, right? Why would I think that it would hurt you for me to call you Black? So these were the confusions of a young child, where I didn't understand why people were doing that, why we would say that, why it continued on to present, where you hear someone go, oh, she was real pretty for a dark-skinned girl. You know, these were the things that I began to pick up and go, what is the etiology of this? Where did this come from? It didn't make sense to me. And so when I looked at it, my whole purpose in even writing the book was getting us to here, because what followed slavery was a mythology that everything got balanced and leveled and fair. And what happened was another layer of oppression and trauma. That's what happened, bringing us fully forward to Mr. Floyd and understanding that this has been unrelenting. But we have to understand, my concern was, how does this impact me, my children, my grandchildren, my community, my people's ability to rise above this in the midst of continued assault? So it was never designed to look at this as something that's over now. It's to look at its etiology, to understand that we had a life before slavery. We weren't people that did not have a civilization, growing brilliance. All of these things were part of my culture that wasn't in my textbook. So we had a life that was interrupted by white supremacy and continues to wreak havoc. So the way I deal with that, the way I understand that, was first, again, looking at our own behaviors, why we say and think and feel and move through the world the way we do. And that was an example of that racial trauma that Malcolm said. He had Malcolm X said, there's no sympathy in me for a person that crushes someone and then complains if they can't stand up under the weight, punishes them for not being able to stand up under the weight, crushing us the whole time. And that to me was the racial trauma that became very clear to me that we needed to address, and we didn't need anybody's help to do that. We could do this ourselves. Hence, the blessings of ABSI and the National Association of Black Social Workers and all the other associations, psychiatrists. We need to look at this. I don't care what white people do. This is something we need to do.
Thank you for that. Yes, I completely hear you. I'm reminded of the work too of Mama Marimba Ani, who talked about the African Holocaust. And so Dr. Nobles, can you also share more of your thoughts here? And more specifically, I would invite you to share with our people about this idea of psychic terrorism that I've heard you speak about many times, and the role of Black psychology in speaking to our truth and understanding this madness in terms of the nosologies that Baba Kambon has shared with us before. So again, what comes up for you when we talk about racial trauma, Black psychology, and psychic terrorism?
I think that a lot of time what comes up is confusion. And it's confusion in terms of how are we recognizing and identifying what is the problem, and how do we name that problem, and then what is the source of remedy for the problem. And I say that because I look at a lot of conversation about racial trauma, and I think that it is a misnomer to call it racial trauma. I think it is the savagery of white supremacy. And we should begin to use the proper language if we're going to ever solve the dis-ease. We are dealing with the savagery of white supremacy. Given the savagery of white supremacy, how do we use our genius to analyze not how it has damaged us? That's very clear. You can see that with the kneeling on George's neck. We don't need to have a deep analysis of how it affects us. What we should be having is a deep analysis of how have we resisted it. If you put your screen on view of everybody, you can look at this picture of us right now, all these 25, 30 people on the screen, and ask yourself, why the hell are they in that room? How did they get there? Why are they looking the way they look? You see, the question for me is if I'm addressing a savage attack, solution is keep the savages away from you. Stay away from the savages. Call them out as savages. Teach your children that you're dealing with not ignorance, but savagery. And then secondly, look at what is impact us and how does it really infect us. And I think that is with the idea of psychic terrorism, because terrorism is an interesting human invention. Terrorism is the act of creating horror, anxiety, fear, dismay that results in immobilization. It is the immobilization of terror that's important. If you look at just your walk around now, your mobility at the airport has changed because of supposedly terrorism. But it's the immobilization of our minds that is the critical issue for us as social workers and psychologists to address. How have our minds been immobilized so we can't think a thought that is not a reflection or reaction to white thought? Can I ask you, all of us, can you think a thought? Let me say it again. Can you, Black folk, can you think a thought? It isn't something that you got out of your educational training and your well and your wisdom and in that bottle of white gin that you were drinking in your educational training. We've been immobilized in the excitement for me of these 52 years of having a relationship with my mistress, A-B-side, is that every now and then we break through with an idea. Every now we do a lot of other, I was telling somebody in response to Bob Williams' transition that Bob Williams and I had a conversation, and we were saying, just before we passed, that look what we created. And we have all these children, and we should be proud of our children. And Bob says we should be proud and sometimes embarrassed by our children. So we got to keep in mind that depending on what we do, we may be an embarrassment to the ancestors and not just say we pour libation to the ancestors. So the psychic terrorism, I think I want to lift up and ask us to, as we talk about racial trauma, also talk about the idea that this immobilization is really designed to keep us from thinking a thought that is not a reflection and a representation and a duplication of white thought. We will never be healed if we don't. And I'll close an example. We just were talking about it, and Dr. Newton gave a good example about these 7 generations of the epigenetically transfer of our pain. But there's also 7 generations of the epigenetic transmission of our genius. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Take yourself right now, come back 7 generations. You weren't enslaved at that 7th generation. What did our ancestors do and think before the invasion, before the disruption, before the derailment? That's what we should be reaching for. That's what Black psychology should be. Black psychology, I believe, Black sociology should be looking at. How do we begin to rescue original, authentic thinking in this time of shutdown, lockdown? We got a moment here. We got a gift here. We locked down. So like Malcolm in prison, read a book, think a thought. Think a thought at this time. But think that thought about now, how can you brush up and make white stuff good and useful? You know, we did that in Black psychology. We tried to make Freud be cool. We probably have Young have walk with him and say, yo, yo, yo. We can't make white stuff black. We have to get away from that and really begin to look at this. So I think the psychic terrorism helps me a lot, because if terrorism immobilizes the people, it's not just immobilizing our behavior, our bodies, it's mobilizing our thinking, our ability to think. And so I would hope that during this conversation today, we begin to break through and ask, for example, what are those, we pour libation to our ancestors. I hope we say we pour libation to them because we're feeding them and they are alive. We can't see them, but they're alive. If they're alive, how do we walk in the visible realm and in the invisible realm as thinkers? How do I engage in a conversation with the invisible ones who built the pyramids? How do I engage in a conversation with the invisible ones who stood up and told their brothers who were concerned about the British invading them that you will not sleep tonight if you accept the British to take our golden stool? How do we talk to those folk? We should talk to each other like we're doing right now, but we should also figure out a mechanism, a methodology for how we can get insight and genius from the invisible realm. That isn't spooky stuff. And Nana Newton was correct that they've taught us to not even to be afraid of our own face when it presents itself as our spiritual religions, our spiritual sciences. So the language is important, how we name things is important, how we define things, because if you name my problem is that I have a headache, when in actuality I have brain cancer, you will never cure me. So to name it as racism is like naming savagery or white supremacy is to the headache as racism is to brain cancer, or vice versa. So you see, so that's what I would say. I think we need to take a moment to get the right terminology, the right nosology that's grounded in our axiology. That's grounded in our axiology to do this work.
Woo, Ashe, Ashe. Welcome, family. If you are just joining us, this is hosted by the Association of Black Psychologists, partnered with our dear colleagues in this work, the National Association of Black Social Workers, and also with us too is Black Psychiatrists of America. So this is a wonderful conversation. We have folks on Zoom as well as on Facebook. So let me check in and see if there's a question coming up. But what I want to underscore that we've already heard around this idea of racial trauma, Brother Jerome was on point when he said it's hell on earth. That is the real quote, family talk conversation. Nana Newton reminded us that this is multi-generational. It's in our DNA. It's impacting us. It goes from one to the other. You do not have to be the direct recipient to still feel the pain. And many times when we see these assaults, we're being reminded of the pain of previous assaults that happened before we took our first breath. And then, of course, Sister Joy clarified very clearly that what she considers to be the idea of this post-traumatic slave disorder is actually a manifestation of the persistent trauma that we're exposed to. So let's not get it twisted. She's not saying anything is over. It is a manifestation. And then, of course, Dr. Nobles is bringing us home and charging us more to think more deeply. Can we have a thought? Can we have an original thought that is located clearly in our African genius and not something that's in reaction to what someone else has taught us, to someone else's ways of thinking? I also want to underscore what Baba said in terms of challenging us to let go of the concept of racial trauma and instead name it as he sees it, which is this idea of dealing with the savagery of white supremacy. So I hope you're taking notes and dropping as this wisdom's being dropped. But let me check and see. Do we have any questions from Facebook at all, Robina? Let's start there.
Yes, we have one question that was submitted, and it reads, how do we include the physical Africa with spiritual Africa? These things aren't presented or discussed on the land where we came from. You cannot fix economies or of We cannot fix economies, or we aren't fixing the issues being discussed. So how to include the physical Africa with the spiritual Africa.
Okay. So panelists, who would like to start with this one? How do we include physical Africa with spiritual Africa?
I would like to try that. And I would say, I promise to pass the hard questions on to Jerome. But I would try.
Yeah, hold on. That's a hard question. I'm glad you didn't pass it to him. That's a hard question. I'm glad you didn't pass it to him.
Well, and then, but I didn't know that Dr. Nichols was going to be on this call. So now my go-to person will be Dr. Nichols.
Well, it could be Dr. Nichols, and then I'll pass president of ABSW, Leonard Dunston. We need to pass it on to him.
Absolutely.
Ashe.
Let me make my
Say, Brother Leonard.
initial response, and then we'll just pass off. I think, again, it's how we define it. And it seems to me that what Africa has taught me in terms of its wisdom traditions is that we've been tricked to believing that we are physical beings and that our physicality, including our physical geography, space, is what's real. But Africa has taught me that we are not physical beings, we are spirit beings. We are vibrating energy. So the question about how we match up the spirituality of Africa and the physical Africa is that if we begin to get the continent, our continental family, as well as our diasporic family, to recognize as spirit beings, there's one global African family. And that the one global Pan-African family is a spirit vibration. And when the spirit vibrating is catatonic, then we got to reestablish its rhythm. We have to reestablish its harmony. So the idea of looking at the confusion in continental Africa is because we overthrew our colonizers and then embraced their system of what it means to be human. And so we never took the opportunity to define what does African governance look like? What does African economy look like? What does African social systems look like? What does African healing look like? We simply embrace all those stuff that Europe left with us, and then our rulership in Africa, as well as here, once they felt that they had gotten a little bit of ability, they would run to Europe for whatever was valuable. Whatever is valuable. So they don't look at Africa as a place of value. They look at Africa as a location that is unhealthy, dehumanizing. And we must go to Europe to get an understanding of what it means to be the good. So I think, again, it's back to the question of how you define the problem. We see ourselves as human beings.
I agree with that.
We see ourselves as human beings, and then our European training us talk about the casing of our human being is blackness, and blackness is evil and bad, and we're in a paradox we can never solve. If we say ourselves as spirit beings, and I manifest my spiritual energy in many forms, then it's a different kind of proposition to deal with.
Thank you, Baba. Were you going to share a little bit here, Brother Jerome, or do you want us to pass it off to Baba Leonard?
I agree with, yeah, well, no, Baba Leonard is the man. But the thing is that neo-colonialism did as much psychological, social, economic damage on continental Africans as American slavery did on us. In fact, we could probably argue that it did more because the damage was done on the original land. But I think that one of the things that we have to emphasize in terms of our spirituality is that we are one. But the problem is that the savagery of white supremacy has always tried to divide us. And of course, that has been very effective. So we are divided by our religion. I saw a question on the chat box about religion. We're divided based on whether I'm from Nigeria or Virginia. We're divided by even our gender identity and orientation. We focus on so many other identities and we consider those identities as important instead of our Black traditional African identity. which I believe should be the primary one under which that we organize and move forward. So one of the problems is really how we see ourselves in these competing identities that we have. And this is particularly interesting now in academia with the growth of something called intersectionality and postmodernism. Some of you are very familiar with those concepts, but essentially what it says is that identity is fluid and not fixed, and therefore there's no particular one identity that should dominate the human being's worldview. But what I'm suggesting is that no people have been able to advance themselves around any kind of agenda without rallying around a particular identity. And I think race is, as Du Bois says, this is the defining moment of the 20th century, and it is continued to be the defining moment of the 21st century. So one of the things we have to do with this are these competing definitions of identity within our own people.
Ashe, thank you for sharing that as well too. So I do want to acknowledge Baba Leonard Dudson, who I believe is on too. Brother Jerome brought to our attention. He's joined us. Would you like to share something as well, Baba Leonard, as a past president for the National Association of Black Social Workers and a Jegna to many of us, and I claim myself in that space too.
Well, first of all, let me say Hotep and good afternoon. I'm sorry I'm a little late coming into this conversation, but I was on another Zoom call that was related to a family issue. As an elder, what I've learned at this stage of my life, Queen Sister Ethiopia, and to the Babas, Brother Jerome, and to Baba Wade, and to the rest of the family, is that when you are an activist, you should stay in your lane. When you come to a conversation like this, you need to learn. So I'm here to really be informed. I do not consider myself a scholar. I am an activist. I'm a Black nationalist. So I'm just here to learn and be more informed about how I can bring this conversation in terms of my Black nationalism into reality with the world in which we are living. So I just want to consume all the information that's going to be shared. I want to thank you, however, for allowing me to at least say hello to the family. I see a lot of family members on this call. And thank you again. And I'm just going to sit back and absorb all this information.
Well, the energy is zooming on Facebook for sure. But let me check in here. Sister Sabrina, is there any questions that are emerging from our Zoom attendees that you'd like to pose to the panelists?
Good afternoon. We did have one. I believe it was somewhat answered, but I will read it out. It says, we are in a culture raised under racism. When you speak about divorcing from things we learned from a racist system, isn't it a journey where we have to seize upon a rite of passage along the way?
So let me invite, if I may, either Sister Joy or Nana Newton to speak to this. So how would you respond to our attendee?
I think it's absolutely appropriate, the idea of the rites of passage. It's something that I've been really trying to think about in terms of working with kids, for example, that are entering these systems that are not designed for us. And to say, not only have we been inauthentic in our ability to function. It's like, when I talk to Black folks, there's a conversation, no matter what the organization is. The organization will bring you in, we'll do this kind of thing. And then I'll talk to the Black folks later, right? And when I have that other conversation, the second conversation with the Black folks, all of a sudden they come freely in their authentic selves. We don't realize how much we have been brainwashed into trying to be somebody else throughout our lives in almost every arena, because every major institution in America is governed by white supremacy. So it doesn't matter what your lane is. It doesn't matter where you are. That's what's at the bottom of it. And we have been moving through these systems all of this time. And I stopped and thought about it for a moment. And I go, that's got to stop. We got to stop sending our children into these systems that are having them conform into becoming people they're not. So a rites of passage, which is what Howard Stevenson colleague and friend, talked about positive racial socialization. And positive racial socialization, it falls right into that rubric of rites of passage. It is deliberate, it is intentional. We are not going to release our children out into a battlefield with no armor. And that's essentially what we've been doing. So the armor we give them is an understanding, a clear understanding of who they are, and a clear understanding of these environments that they're going to be entering so that they might know about it and shore them up so that they can navigate it and be their authentic selves. Because the degree to which we are not authentically who we are is the degree to which we fall into pathology. So that whole idea of rites of passage is it's more than a notion. It's something that we really need to embrace as individuals, as families, as communities, that we are intentional about helping our children embrace their whole Blackness and understanding that that is broad and wide and strong and capable of sustaining them.
Ashe. And for Dr. Newton, what comes up for me as well when we think about this indoctrination into Western ways of being and thinking that can actually pull us away from our own humanity and our need to wake up our brilliance, it becomes striking for me when I think about how people are trained in the medical field. And so can you speak to how did you come to be coming through that system? You know, what's the awakening that Black psychology and Black consciousness can bring to those who are trained in such a way as strongly as the medical field, strongly as psychiatry? How did you come to be in spite of? You may be on mute. You're on mute, Dr. Newton. I hope you can hear me, Dr. Newton. You're still on mute.
Okay,
There you are.
am I okay now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I wanted to answer both questions, the one you
Please.
asked previously as well as this one. You know, I'm reminded of a phrase from the great African writer, Ikwe Arma, who said, "A mind that has been attacked and conquered is easily led away from the path of its own soul." And so part of the issue, and Baba, I agree with everything that everybody has said, and Baba Noble said it very eloquently, and that is that we think in dichotomous ways because that's how we have been trained. And before we can begin to do the things that we need to do about rites of passage for our children, we need organizations like ABSI, National Association of Black Social Workers, and to a lesser degree, the Black Psychiatrists of America, to take our parents through rites of passage, because that is a critical need so that they will then not be sending these mixed and confused messages to their children, so that they begin to no longer embrace the oppressor's methodologies, the oppressor's language, the oppressor's analysis of the situations in which they live. So I just want to put that in there because I think Dr. Degree is correct. We have to take our children, but we also need to take our adults and reprogram them. In other words, I always say we get to rewire the neural networks of our adults. And as it relates to medicine, well, what can I tell you? Medicine is a very one, dehumanizing, and two, race-baited discipline. Let's just put it that way. And everything is compared on Black and white without looking at the genetics of either group in the context. And so part of the issue is, how do you survive a system that way? And one, you have to have nurturing from your own elders. And nurturing, in my case, came from my family, because both of my parents were very active in the early civil rights movement when the NAACP was considered a radical organization. Can you believe that? But so you have nurturing at home that grounds you in who you are as a person, so that when you go into these hostile environments, you know that no matter what they say or what they do, that you have a divine mission, and that mission was given to you through your ancestral lineage, as well as through the expectations that the people who you represent have for you. And so regardless of what I was told in medicine, I knew better, because there's that intelligence of the heart as well as the intelligence of the mind that the ancient ancestors talk about, and the intelligence of the heart lets you know. And how do I know? Well, we have a neurobiological system called our autonomic nervous system that allows us to get a very negative reaction in our gut. When stuff is raggedy and it's wrong, your gut will tell you. And so we have been conditioned to not listen to that gut, to that ancestral memory, to that knowingness of generations that is a part of our existence. And so I say to my people who are listening, and to my patients as well, listen to your gut, because your gut will not listen to what is in the environment. It will not have the programming of going against your own nature. It will only operate on the matter of survival. And so when you listen to your gut, it will tell you if this knowledge that you're being given is crap. You know, I was going to say another word, but I forgot we're on a mixed kind of environment here. And so what am I saying? I'm saying that I was taught by my family, through my ancestors, and a grandmother who was real clear about her African lineage, to listen to that little still voice, your gut, that autonomic nervous system that tells you, in fact, that this is either counterfeit or this is the fact. And so I began to remember to look at what truths are versus facts. And truths are whatever you believe them to be, or whatever somebody else believes them to be. But the facts are whatever they are, regardless of what your beliefs. And the facts that I was told from my family did not validate what I was being told in medicine, and what I saw in terms of the disrespect and disregard for patients of African descent, as well as colleagues of African descent. So learning to listen to your gut, learning to not believe your oppressors, because they are your oppressors, and understanding that I got to get this digit in order to be able to get through the door to do what I need to do for my people. I got to just get through this system and then come back and beat that system down.
Thank you. So what comes with me again is what was taught to us in terms of the miseducation of the Negro, that we have to learn what we need to learn to get what we need to get to have that degree in this space, if that's our intentionality. But then how do we unlearn that and really be intentional about tapping into our African brilliance, so that that degree becomes in the service of our people and not a weapon used to be used against them. So again, welcome. We're spending this first half to sort of clarify and define the problem. And then then we'll take a break, and we'll bring back in Dr. Alton to give us a little bit of a yoga and in chair space. We can kind of go into the second half, which is defining our solutions and our strategies moving forward. So I want to ask the panel too, before I go back to one of our questions here, how do you define and understand systemic oppression, and particularly its impact around our spiritualness? And Dr. Nobles, I believe, opened this up quite nicely when he reminded us that we are spirit beings having a human experience and the centrality of our spiritness. But I just want to add this in here too. How do you shift the definition or clarify the definition of systemic oppression so it's much more meaningful to our humanity? Who would like to take that part on for me? Just opening it up for the group.
Well, I think that, obviously the oppression has affected us, as Sister Newton has said, with mind, body, and soul. And so soul is a critical aspect of who we are as a people. As we get into the next section of the presentation, I also would like to offer spirituality as a solution to our problems. And that in the past, our spirituality has been manifested in the ethic, the community ethic of caring and sharing. And so I just put that out there for now. But obviously, the oppression is holistic. I think one of the problems is that how do we reach? How does this message resonate with brothers and sisters on the streets of Philadelphia, Baltimore, who are down and out, don't have a pot to piss in, never have had any kind of show of supportive love? What are some of the strategies that we use to reach those people? And again, I offer spirituality as the ethic of caring and sharing. How do we institutionalize that in our communities is a major challenge as we move forward.
I wanted to add something, and I so appreciate what Dr. Newton said. One of the things that we have taken for granted that also folds so nicely into what Baba Noble said, and that is the fact that we as a people, there constantly, people have always looked at our children, and for everyone paying attention, have you ever heard the term, because I'm from a different cohort, reading people? My daddy would talk about how you read folk. And Black people have always been able to read people. But we have that ability to read behavior and to intuit intent, motivation as young as 4. So we've got to appreciate that our children already are reading what's going on around them long before their white counterparts. We're able to read. So that's why this whole idea of leaning into this is really important, because we've been able to do this from very, very young. I don't care what you're telling me. I'm reading your behavior. I can tell by the body language that you don't respect me, or you don't like me, or you don't feel like I'm smart. Our children have that ability early, which means that we have to be very intentional about letting them know, yes, in fact, you are seeing, hearing, and feeling what you are seeing, hearing, and feeling. And that is a spiritual capacity that we have always had. And it really requires that we, again, acknowledge it, embrace it, help our children learn how to navigate it, because it's present. I can remember being in spaces as a child and having teachers saying stuff to me, and it's almost like a whole nother board shows up telling me what you're really about. Always knew it, which is why our children always come home and say, the reason I'm getting a bad grade is because my teacher doesn't like me. Right. And that doesn't like me is a whole lot of stuff. What that doesn't like, doesn't believe in me, doesn't trust me, doesn't encourage me. That's what doesn't like me means. And we've been saying it for generations because we've been reading that behavior. And so what the methods of healing is to help our children, one, hold on to and totally embrace their knowledge and their ability to manage these systems, and to be able to walk away from and acknowledge or counter information that is telling them something that is not true in their hearts and soul, in their gut.
Thank you for those words. Let's take one more question before we go into our break to engage in our yoga and chair. Let's see, Sabrina, do we have anything that's coming through on the chat room that we want to have the panelists address?
Let me check for you.
Okay.
Madam President, while she's checking, may I comment on something?
Absolutely, Baba.
It seems to me that I want to keep reinforcing that we have to make sure we have the right tools, the right language. And just as both Joy and Pat were talking about guts and feelings, what I understand about being a spirit being is that we have a knowing and knowable spirit. Our spirit knows. So the spirit of our children knows that they're being assaulted in the classroom. They come back, their language doesn't allow them to express it quite accurately. So they say, they don't like me. But is their spirit saying you are in the presence of evil and hostility? Our spirits, we have knowing and knowable spirits. So we as the healers, as the scholars, need to embrace the proper language so that we can share with your children. What our parents would say to me, I don't care if she don't like you, your job is to go there and learn. That's the wrong
That's the
response.
wrong, right.
The response is your spirit is correct, but I want you to learn learn as much you can in spite of that evilness. So language, it is said that when you speak someone else's language, you carry the weight of their civilization.
Ashe.
So we speak the language of the terminology of our formal training. We carry that weight along with us. Break away from it. Begin to embrace the idea of languaging our experience through an African lens. And that's hard work. That's hard work, but we begin to rescue that. And so as we begin to talk about this, Pat, you're absolutely right. Your gut tells you something, but telling me that my gut tells me something keeps me in the grounded in the material world. Your gut is not really, is not the physical gut that's telling you, it's that invisible spirit of your ancestors that are
Absolutely.
in you that are telling you something. So I want to invite us to embrace and rescue languaging that gives us the liberty to be who we are.
I want to comment on that. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I agree with Baba, because part of the issue is that as parents, what we often do is deprogram that spirituality from our children.
Yes.
We will tell them that what they're feeling is not right. Miss So-and-so is okay, but the child picks up something from Miss So-and-so that may even have to do with whether they like them or not, or whether or not that person may be sick. We must begin to embrace these children because they're closer to their spirituality, what I call their gut and their spirituality, than we are, because we have been socialized so far away from it that we don't recognize it when we do see it in our children. And I just want to offer that as a cautionary tale to people who are listening, who are raising children, to begin to please stop badgering your children and telling them that what they're feeling is not correct.
Okay. Beautiful, thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift a little bit here. I'm going to go ahead and invite Baba Cedric to share a few comments, and then we will take a break to move into our yoga and chair. And while we're doing that, I really want to invite our listeners and particularly our panelists to begin to go into a space of now, how do we bring all this truth forward? What are our strategies? What can we share with folks that can know exactly what to do? We're hearing one right now, which is, as a family members, how do we be careful how we're using our words and remind our children that the spiritness of what they felt coming from someone who is questioning them is real, to protect that and not let it demean them in any way, so we don't inadvertently reinforce the negative messages coming from other folk. So Baba Cedric, let's get a few comments from you before we transition over to Dr. Alton.
Thank you very kindly. Real quickly, I just wanted to comment on what's being stated regarding the question about spirituality. How does it work, African spirituality, and kind of sort of in a nutshell, how does it tie in today with what we're doing? How do we get our children, in a sense, to be deprogrammed from what it is that they think? Some even suggested that how do we tie the complexities of the different religions of the Dogon, Amali, and Yoruba, and sex and ethnicity? How do we tie all of these things in together to bring about the whole change of self-identity? Well, one thing that I'm going to suggest is that we have to look at who we are and what we do. For example, a lot of things we have to remember. We have to, as Dr. Noble said, we have to pass things down. When you think about religion, when grandmama cooks something, right? You always look for grandma dish. No one could cook that like grandma. Well, what is that? Is that spirituality or is it religion? The thing is, we know where math comes from, but how many of us are continuously educating our young ones or our grandchildren or our nephews and nieces about how powerful they are because we equipped them, the world, with math, the Dogon Amani, how they mapped out the stratosphere. Where did NASA get it from? So we look at these things, we look for a big solution, we look somewhere far and wide, but really it's right in front of our face. When we start reaching back into who we are and start teaching the young ones, yes, you're important because this is what you did. You did math, science, astrology, all of these things. That crosses the question of someone asking, how do we take the religion of the Yoruba? How do we take the religion of Christianity or Islam or the the Malinke, the Bambara. How is it that we tell all of these things is? Why? Because a lot of us have to incorporate this in our daily lives. That's where the spirituality comes in. It has to become part of our daily lives. And not only because we pick it up and take it off the whatnot shelf and then just use it when it's convenient. These things help to permeate in our system so that we can be able to, when someone comes to us with some misinformation about identity. You remember the late Dr. Carter G. Woodson said that if you can control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his action. Why are other people defining our thinking and controlling our actions? It's because we've really forgotten that principle of what self-identity is about in terms of how we can reach it every day. We have to be able to reach it. And then when you cook the certain meals, you make it simple and plain for people who don't quite understand. You know, people, we do attack to a certain degree the levels of systemic racism, whether it's Christianity or whether it's someone taking your identity from you, whether you're being locked up in jail or whether you're being racially profiled. A lot of those things can be combated because we have the knowledge, we have the education, and some of you guys have the expertise. But every day, how do we meet people where they are? So I'm going to suggest that what we do is to go back and take a look at what's right in front of our face and say, hey, cornbread tastes like couscous. The couscous came from this place. This came from that place. Cotton came from this place. Otherwise, we'll be arguing with a system that don't care whether or not our education is valid or invalid. So we have to be able to take that role ourselves and be leaders where we are.
Beautiful. Thank you, Baba Cedric. So again, we're going to take a break now, turn over to Dr. Alston to do a little bit of a yoga and chair with us, and then we'll go into the second half of our panel, which will give us strategies that everyday folk can use, as well as those of us who consider ourselves educated. And that's an intentional word from my grandmother. So over to you, Sister Alston.
Namaste, everyone. Hotep, everyone. I'd like to thank you again for letting me be here. I just want to express something that, for me, a lot of what I've been hearing, I feel like some parts of it I've been doing, which is the Ashe Yoga Studio and Tea Room, is Black owned, and it's founded so that African Americans could come into a yoga studio and not feel uncomfortable. Oftentimes people will go to places, these establishments, and they're meeting white people and they're re-traumatized again. And so I just want to let you know, if you're ever in the city of Philadelphia, we're here, and it's a beautiful studio, and it really has been in existence for over 10 years, 15 years, close to 15 years. So please come. Now, having said that, yoga really addresses a lot of these issues that we're talking about in terms of the autonomic nervous system. It's difficult to go right into a movement if we don't prime the mind to understand where we're going with this. Yoga works with the breath. It balances the autonomic nervous system. It balances the left and right hemisphere. If you need evidence, the white man has all of the evidence that you need to prove that yoga actually works. But yoga is ours. You know, I've written 2 books on yoga, really attributing all that we've done in terms of the spiritual world. You know, people say, oh, yeah, but it's true. And for me, truth is very important. So let's come into a comfortable position. This is actually called the kinetics posture, asana, where you sit, and you sit with your back erect. You sit with your shoulders back. You sit with your head centered. Place your hands on your lap. You can place it down, you can place it up. If you're placing your hands down, you're grounding the energy. If you're placing it up, you're raising the energy. So we're going to take a moment here, and we're going to take our thumb and put it on our right nostril. We're going to inhale through the left nostril. We're going to take our index finger, place it on the left nostril, and we're going to exhale through the right nostril. So close your eyes and just take a few moments while we practice alternate nostril breathing. We're going to inhale through the right nostril. We're going to place our right thumb on the right nostril and exhale through the left nostril. Inhale through the left nostril. Exhale through the right nostril. And then we're going to place our hands down and breathe through both nostrils. Your left nostril is your feminine side. Your right nostril is your masculine side. Left nostril is moon. Right nostril is the sun. So if I'm very excited and I'm getting very upset and my system is in flight, I may breathe through my left nostril a little bit more to calm myself down. If I need a little bit more energy and I want to move a little bit more, I may breathe through my right nostril. So let's take a moment here and breathe through both nostrils because we're balancing the left and right side of our brain. And now we're going to inhale again. So whenever we're inhaling, you know we're lifting. We're going to exhale. When we exhale, we're bringing the chin all the way to the chest. Inhaling up, drawing the chin up. Exhale, bringing the chin down. Inhale up. Okay, so we're working with the back of the neck. We're working with the sides of the neck. All of these are connected to the brain. And so we want to inhale. I'm going to exhale, bring the right ear to the right shoulder. Feel that stretch on the left side. Inhale up. Exhale all the way to the right, to the left side, stretching the right side. Inhale up. Again, working with the breath. Exhale all the way to the opposite side. Inhale up. Exhale all the way to the left side. And now draw your head up, close your eyes. Let's do a body scan. When we do a body scan, we check from the crown of our head all the way to the soles of our feet. Check in. When we check in, and checking in is breathing into maybe a spot or area of your body that may feel uncomfortable, something that may have been bothering you. Could be your knees, could be your shoulders, your back, your lower back. So we want to breathe into those areas, some fresh energy, some fresh oxygen, opening up the cells. We have the ability to heal. And so we're going to take a deep breath in. And now we're going to inhale our toes up. Just the toes or the feet. We're going to exhale them down. When you exhale them down, come all the way up. Exhale your toes down, inhale your toes up. Exhale down, inhale up. Exhale down, inhale up. And now rest your toes. And now I'm just going to slightly lift my leg. I'm going to interlace my fingers behind my knees. Again, if this is difficult, you can place it down lower. And all you're going to do is rotate your feet around in a circle. Just rotate it around. This is also good for the knee joints. And then exhale all the way around. We practice in a yoga studio what is called Pavamukasana, which is joint freeing. We want to free those joints so we can have our hips, we can have our joints. And now relax your feet down. What we do to one side, we do to the opposite side. We're going to inhale our left leg up, and we're going to rotate around in a nice little small circle. And then we're going to go into the opposite direction. Draw your legs down. Take a moment here. Breathe in and then release. Allow your body to relax. You deserve to relax. Remember, relaxation is queen. So you're going to lift your knee. You're going to bend your knee, just like you're sitting. Just draw your ankle onto your right thigh. And if you can, place your right hand on your right knee and just draw that knee up. We're working with the hip joint. We're going to exhale down. Inhale up. Exhale down. Inhale up. And we're just exhaling down very gently, providing some lubrication in our joints. We're going to draw the right foot back onto the floor. Take a moment here and see how that hip joint feels. The hips are not as mobile as the shoulders. So we're always going to be very careful with the body. Now we're going to bend, lift that left leg up, and we're going to bend the ankle, bring the ankle right onto the right thigh. Take a moment here. And then you're going to use your left hand. Very gentle. You're going to bring that left knee into the, if you can bring it into the middle of the shoulders, that's fine. Exhale, but be where you are. Remember, yoga is not a performance, it's a practice. Inhale up. As you can see, I'm using my breath and I'm exhaling down. Inhale up, exhaling down. We want to keep our joints, we want to keep our ankles, we want to keep our limbs, we want to keep all parts of our body, our knees. And so these series of these asanas actually help you maintain that. So just start to move your legs up and down, inhaling your heels up, heels down, heels up, heels down. And now bring your arms out. You're going to turn the palms of your hands up like you're receiving something. You're just going to bring the tip of your fingers on your shoulders. Inhale out, and then exhale in. And now I'm going to do another asana that's one of my favorites. It is about reclaiming your power. It's a martial art move, but it's also a yogic move. You're going to make a soft fist with your hands. And what you're going to do, you're going to inhale and exhale really heavy so you can hear it. You're going to inhale your arms out. You're going to exhale in. But when you bring it in, you're going to bring your hands out. What you're doing is you're reclaiming your power. Inhale out. Bring your hands out and reclaim your power. So you really want to say, what am I reclaiming power? Inhale out, exhale in, inhale out, exhale in, inhale out, exhale in, inhale out, exhale in. And now we just rest our hands on our thighs. We take a moment here. Take a deep breath in. Bring your hands onto your heart. Exhale. Remember, the heart and the mind are connected. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Remember, yoga is Maya. Yoga brings about balance, order, harmony, peace, and joy. I want to thank you so much. I want to ask that you continue to take care of yourself.
Thank you, my dear sister Ashe. Thank you. Again, so as we move into the second half, we have been invited to conceptualize racial trauma in this more accurate concept of the savagery of white supremacy. We have clearly understood the impact, the epigenetic impact from one generation to the next, and how it is how it can alter who we are, how it can alter. We're very clear about being able to tap into the African genius, our cultural geniusness to move us forward. So before I invite our panelists to sort of share strategies, I want to ask a very brief question here of each of you. Can you share a particular theory and or theorist that was most impactful for you? What I'm wanting to honor is that some of our listeners, as I said before, are new to this conversation of Black psychology. We want to make sure we're feeding them as we continue to go deeper with those who've been engaged in this work for a long time. So again, for each of our panelists, what might be your one or two theorists or theories that you'd want someone to understand in terms of Black psychology? Do you want to go first, Sister Joy?
Sure. One of the very first ones is the philosophical aspects of cultural difference, introduced by my my dear friend and family. He's like dad to me. Dr. Nichols introduced that concept, that philosophical aspects of cultural difference, his paradigm, and it changed my life. It in the name of a real dear friend Ogie, he rearranged me. It just rearranged me and gave me practical insights into how to engage with anybody, any human being. And of course, reading the work of Naim Akbar. I mean, these were folks that kind of woke me up to another way of thinking and being.
Thank you. Brother Jerome?
Yes, a couple of people, but a major piece article that I would advise everyone to read is a chapter in a book. Then it was published as an article, but it's entitled "Voodoo or
Ooh,
IQ:
yes.
An Introduction to African Psychology," and
Deep.
it was written by Dr. Wade Nobles, Dr. Naeem Akbar, Dr. Phil McGee, and Dr. Cedric X. And that was a major turning point for me in terms of looking at our people as African people. So that's a major piece. Also, a major book for me is by Messenger Muhammad, Black Message to the Black Man by Elijah Muhammad. That really also turned my life around in terms of grounding us as the original people. Now he may have described it as Asiatic black man, but that was major. And then also being trained in the School of Social Work at Howard University, we focus heavily on Black families, and we didn't focus on the pathology of Black families, but we focused on the strengths of Black families. So I would have to resurrect the names of Dr. Andrew Billingsley, Dr. Lawrence Gary, Dr. Joyce Ladner, Dr. Harriet McAdoo, and others who were major Black family theorists, including Dr. Nobles' too, his famous essay, African Root, American Fruit, the Black Family. So those are a couple of theorists and people, scholars who influenced my life, including, of course, Messenger Muhammad.
Blessings. And Dr. Newton, whose names would you want to also bring forward or works? Particularly for those who are in the medical field needing to unpack the pathology that they're being indoctrinated into. And you may be on mute again.
Okay, I all the people who have been named before, including Dr. Nichols and Dr. Nobles, who I've known and treasured their work for years. I'd also like to add Dr. Amos Wilson and Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. Her work has been phenomenal for me in terms of looking at the keys to the color, the ISIS papers. These works were good in terms of focusing my psychiatric practice in the way it should go and not making pathology out of the behaviors that I was seeing. So everybody that's been cited before, definitely Dr. Naeem Akbar as well. But I wanted to add Amos Wilson and I wanted to add Dr. Welsing.
Ashe. And then, of course, Baba Nobles. Name, please. Without having to list your entire bibliography, name those who you think should also be brought into the conversation in terms of their contributions to our cultural awareness.
It really has been a conversation that's been going on. So I would start with, for my list, I would start with Frantz Fanon. I would then talk about Bobby Wright, Asa Hilliard, Naeem Akbar, Saeed Khatib, Kobe Cambone, Remember Ani, Frances Cress Welsing. And there's a new person that just came on my reading list yesterday named Isabel Wickerson. She's written a book about caste. And I would invite everybody to look at that book, because what she's done is that she's helped, I'm emphasizing the importance to have the right nomenclature, right language. She talks about America being a caste system. And when we deal with these racial stuff and racial categories are in defense of the permanent caste system in America. Yes. And so we should begin as thinkers and scholars to put in the conversation, particularly now everyone wants to relook at what's going to be the new norm, that we're talking about how do we break down this caste system. She points out in her writings that when Martin Luther King went to India to look at what he called the leader of the nonviolent movement, they introduced Martin Luther King, Nobel Peace Prize winner, as I want y'all to meet one of the untouchables from America. We have a caste system. So I think that it's important that all the names for the people who listen here, all the names that we have collectively mentioned read everything they've written. Read everything, because some of it we have to correct. Some of our work we have to correct because we weren't on point. Other stuff we need to look at and begin to talk about how do we apply that. So, I'm adding to your charge, Madam President. Not only look at these people, but be prepared to correct them when they may be off point, and then to go use the best of our thinking to make applications.
Thank you, Bob. And of course, I would like to also add the works of Dr. Linda James Myers in terms of optimal theory to the work of our, who's already transitioned as an ancestor of Dr. Phillips in terms of UM2 therapy. We have a number out here. I would also refer the viewer, the listener, to the Journal of Black Psychology, where many of the scholarship is there. And more important, like any other good scholar, make sure you go to the reference page and see who they are drawing from and keep that critical conversation going. And I'll close this portion by saying, if anything is for us, it must be by us. So if the title has got African Black in it and you flip to the reference page and you do not see original authors, original thinkers, and names that we mentioned here, then you're already starting off needing to question its authority. Whose space is it coming from? We must tell our own story, our own narrative. So as we move into the closing part of this here now, I really do want to ask us, what are real folk practical strategies that you want the listeners to take home as we continue to not only deal with the savagery of white supremacy, but clearly step into our own humanity, because this is our point, our time, our history. If we do not do it now, shame on us in the future. I will also say too that our support team, giving a shout out for our social media team, they will be posting both in the Zoom chat room and on Facebook a resource list, a handout from today's conversation, so you'll be able to be in touch with those of us doing the work. But let's just have at it. So where do we go from here? How do we move forward? What are we drawing from? Brother Jerome, why don't you start us off? Practical strategies for the people to combat the savagery of white supremacy and get back into your own righteous mind.
Right, right. Well, we have to also correct our communities. And I think that as we think about terrorism, it's really collective or community terrorism. And it's had collective and community effects. But I think that we have really two great traditions in Black America, quite frankly, that we can draw on. One tradition I alluded to earlier, and that's and Barbara Leonard Dunstan mentioned this, but it's really the tradition of Black self-help and institution building. And that's a major tradition in our people. One of the good books that I would recommend was by Elmer Martin and Joanne Martin. If you're familiar with the Great Blacks in Wax Museum in Baltimore, they created that museum, but they also were social work scholars. And there's a book that they offered. It's entitled Spirituality in the Black Helping Tradition in Social Work. But essentially what they see is that spirituality was essentially the core part of our caregiving personality as a people. And that caregiving personality was comprised of the racial self, the community self, and the spiritual self. And they argued that what drove our people to take care of ourselves in the face of severe terrorism and adversity was the ethic of caring and sharing. They essentially define spirituality in terms of its material manifestations as the ethic of caring and sharing. And what this means is that we take that ethic and we begin to establish and build social service institutions. We begin to establish businesses. We begin to establish different institutions that embrace and affirm our culture. We can redefine with this spirituality what a family is, what the role of father and mother is. and that essentially this particular spirituality is really what brought us through. And so they talk about a kind of material expression of spirituality, how the spirituality led to the development of critical institutions in our community, like businesses, like schools, and other institutions. So that's one tradition in our community. But then there's another tradition in our community, and that's political activism and advocacy. That it would be the tradition of people like Stokely Carmichael, people like Ella Baker. These people forced through protests our core need to advance ourselves within America. They advocated for our rights. Black Lives Matter is a great example of this kind of activism today, and other forms of political advocacy. I think that if we look at this approach, we can take on what Naeem Akbar has called a team approach. So on the one hand, we do have this Black self-help tradition, but on the other hand, we also have this tradition of outside advocates, political activism, policy advocacy, and people like Stokely Carmichael and others would be examples of that. I think to reach the brother and sister on the street, we really need community-based organizations that are funded by us, that are funded through other means, but primarily by us, where we go out and actually reach out to brothers and sisters in the community. We do have organizations in Baltimore that are doing that too. But I mean, back in the day, you had several organizations who actually would have people on the streets who would actually go out in the streets to share the message of Black self-determination, of Black love. And we need more of those kinds of organizations and efforts, because essentially we have to go where the people are. The people are not going to be in conferences like this. They're not going to get to academia. And so one of the two institutions that we have in our community that can help in this regard is Black religious organizations, school systems. Those are two major organizations that can, if transformed, can really help in our community. Black religious organizations, for example, have a lot of money and resources, whether they're Christian or Muslim or whatever. And those resources should be used for community development, community uplift, what the 19th century people called race work. And so those are a couple of strategies that I would offer Sister Ethiopia,
Thank you.
reaching into the best of our traditions of Black self-help and also political activism.
So I wanted to chime in, and I'm going to kind of go through a micro to a macro. I'm hands-on. I'm on the street with folks. I think that's really important. Those of us that are in this arena who tend to not show up there, we need to show up there. We need to be present. We need to be accessible to people, and that's everybody, not everybody. I want to remind us that we're right now dealing with COVID, which is why we're doing this the way we're doing this. And what I want to say about that is there is still quite a digital divide. There are people who not only don't have a computer, they don't have the internet. There are folks that are not sheltering in place in safe places. There are in all of the above, the folks that aren't here. So this is a each one teach one, and everything has to happen at the level of a village. You have your individual, you have your family, you have your community. That is our village. So we cannot heal one part. We got to heal all parts of the village, whatever lane you're in. I don't ask anybody, do you? I'm gonna do me. And I love to know that the folks here are doing what they're doing in their lane. So that's number one. One of the things that's been found to be very beneficial, believe it or not, the proverb, the African proverb that says, when you pray, move your feet, right? So trust in God, but tie your camel. So at the same time that we have to understand that faith is action, like love is action. So it's not something we sit back and kind of have. It is reflected in our behavior and actions. What we found has been very effective and very helpful is knowing your own story and telling your own story within families. For families to begin to talk to their children about their stories, not just the story of our great leaders, Harriet Tubman, all that's great, but granddaddy and great granddaddy, if you can go there, to know your story, very important in basically helping buttress folks to moderate stress, because stress is coming. Stress is happening right now. The storm's happening. We got to figure out how to navigate that. So one of those ways are literally helping families learn to create their own narrative, their own tapestry, right? Children knowing their story. They've been able to, there's studies that have been done about children being able to manage stress just because they know they've made it through. The other thing that I think is really very, very important is one of the things I've been noticing as I've been doing a lot more of this with Black folks from around the country is, of course, the stress level is high. But what I'm also seeing, and I want to really kind of touch the brains of our brain trust that we have, I'm seeing increasing levels of social anxiety disorder, panic, and anxiety in general in young people who are literally almost paralyzed. They are unable to engage on an outward level. They do this mechanical, electronic stuff really well, but I'm seeing more and more of that. And one of the things that I'm doing with my organization, with my group, I'm doing a 10-week graduate level course that anybody can take. I'm doing an advanced course for implementation, and I'm talking to people about understanding that we carry with us our spirituality wherever we go. So that means that we have to operationalize that. When we start talking about virtues and we start talking about how we're moving through the world and touching base with people, having collective meditations, healing circles, prayer circles, but really just calling upon that there's only one reality, right? However you look at it, whatever you call it, it's a singular reality. Truth and knowledge are one point. Ignorant have multiplied it. And if we can lean into it, there's a lot of power there. I am reminded that we have to, not only when we start talking about leadership and even social activism, but we have to keep people accountable. Maynard Jackson said to me that we got to get rid of a couple of people. One is the scared Negro. He said it's a scared Negro. And that's the Negro that gets the job and becomes a gatekeeper because they're so scared of losing their job. And the other is the incompetent Negro, where we keep propping up folks that's not right. As Baba Wade Noble said, we got to, help people along if they're doing the wrong thing or they don't have it right. But it does no good for us to prop up folks that ain't right. Okay, we lose our own credibility. So we have to hold people accountable. I remember Randall Robinson said to me, he said, many of our leaders came to do good, but stayed to do well. And that's also in the religious realm as well. All of a sudden, it became a whole nother thing. And so we really do need to keep people accountable to our community, especially when they're kind of using the community, trusting the community, relying on the community. Well, we need something back from you. And we need to hold people accountable for what they're here for. The other thing that I think is really important has to do with cortisol. It was talked about earlier. I believe that we have excessive levels of cortisol. Cortisol actually shuts off your ability to even think. So our children that have too much cortisol, our young people, even adults with too much cortisol are not functional. And that cortisol, when we start looking at a white supremacist reemergence, and we got to know, everybody on this call got to know that it's really deep right now and that we are dangerously underestimating just how crazy this might get. So I'm saying that we can read the writing on the wall. We need to be prepared for whatever's coming. And that means that there's going to be high levels of stress, which means it's the sister that brought us in, doing the meditation, doing the yoga, doing all of those spiritual practices, because in my belief, faith is conscious knowledge. It's not blind following, it's conscious knowledge. And it's reflected in deeds, in action. And if it isn't reflecting in action, it's not real faith, because faith should be demonstrated to confess with the tongue, to believe in the heart, but to give evidence in your action. Those are the three components of faith. And so therefore, we have to fold into practice on a very pragmatic level some of these things. The first thing I wanted to say, I'm not one to dominate, but I wanted to talk about some of the research that we've been doing.
It looks like Sister Joy, you froze. We'll give that about 10 seconds to see if they're correct. Okay, so if we may, and I'm sure she'll come back to join us again. So in the interim, I'd like to move over to you, Dr. Newton, particularly when you think about where you started this conversation around the realities of how this thing of being exposed to the savagery of white supremacy can impact us. What would you offer as clear strategies that people can do, people can do, professionals and otherwise?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. The first thing that I want to say is that we have to be kinder and gentler and more loving to each other. We've learned from our oppressors how to manifest cruelty and how to perpetrate that upon our kith and kin. I want to offer to everyone the need to be kinder and gentler. We don't have to curse each other out. We don't have to correct people by swearing at them. I want us to change that language because it does create negative vibrations in our body, in our spiritual being. I want us to begin to what I call the D's of what we need to do in terms of our determination. And I just read them and I'll go to them for you. We have duty, we have diligence, determination, dependability, and yes, we need dollars. So I want to talk about the last one. We need to pool our economic resources, and we need to, wherever we can, support those businesses that are like us, even though they may cost a little more. I want to put that out there up front. And because our businesses are the people who hire our people. And so we want to see if we can begin to educate our children in how to be more entrepreneurial in terms of that whole concept, because that's an African concept, the whole issue of entrepreneurship. We have to be determined to do better. And to have that determination requires us, as Joy was saying, to have some level of accountability and dependability. If you say you're gonna do something, do it. Stop using the word try, because that doesn't cross the corpus callosum. To go from the right brain to the left brain is just mental masturbation. It feels good, but it ain't the real thing. And I want to just put that out there. We have to be diligent. If we say we're going to do it, we need to do it, and we have to work hard at it. And we have a duty, a Ma'atian duty, to protect our children, to protect our community, and to drive out the negativity. That means that we have to stop abusing our children, physically, mentally, sexually. That's critical. And I want to put that out there because many of us try to gloss over that. And that's why we're not successful, because we're trying. So the duty to protect, the duty to take care of our elderly, the dependability for our word, determination to get the job done, the ability to be diligent and to begin to pool our resources and eliminate the fear. We are looking at historical fear, and that paralyzes us. And I want us to recognize that if you're going to, like one of my patients said when they were protesting and people were worrying about the COVID virus, the patient said to me something that I will have to repeat. If I'm going to die, it might as well be for something that is relevant to my people.
Ashe, thank you, Dr. Newton. And I believe that Joy is back with us now. So if you want to close your comments, Dr. Joy.
Sure. I am having, I forget, I have thunderstorms where I am and everything just shuts out. This is new for me, new move back to the East Coast. What I wanted to talk about very quickly, as I started working with people in the community, for example, when I was working in Portland, we were trying to have a standalone African-American mental health center because everybody else had one. But what was happening with Black folks is you had white organizations and you had these, they said, give us the money, we'll get a few token people in there, and they weren't serving us. And so what I realized, when we went to argue before the state about a standalone, the first thing, they said was, oh, well, we don't have any, there's no knowledge that Black people would like to have Black therapists. We don't have any evidence of that. Let's go, really? They said, yeah, we did a survey. I said, oh, really? How many of them came back, right? So I started to realize that even when we want to reach out to our people, my sense is when people know better, they do better. But we've got to ask the right questions. For example, in my family, you have grandchildren. I got skin in the game. I show up to schools. I do free training. I train teachers, parents, administrators, anybody who's standing still, because I got skin in the game. And I feel very strongly. So my family actually wrapped itself around the schools that my grandchildren were going to. So here's the thing. Principal makes this statement. White principal says, Black parents, are not attending teacher-parent conferences, right? So again, first of all, you've demonized the Black parents because they're not coming. And the answer is hidden in the statement, which is they just need to come. Right. So we went in, my daughter went in, and she says, I think you need to rephrase that by saying we're not getting participation of all our parents at parent teacher or back to school night or whatever it is. We're not getting everybody. Then you can go to your target population, which are the Black folks you're trying to help. Because remember, that's another aspect of what the trauma comes from, schools. So we go and we talk to the parents. So the first thing my daughter does is she doesn't go, why aren't you coming? She goes, why do you think somebody might not attend a teacher parent conference or a back to school night? The parent responds, Black parent, I don't know about anybody else, I don't have time. Oh, so if you had time, you would come. Well, sometimes I don't have childcare. Okay, so if you had time and childcare, you would come. Yeah, sometimes I don't have transportation. Oh, so if you had transportation, childcare, and you had time, you would come. And there's silence. And she says, I don't ever feel welcome in that building. That was the problem. Do you see? And again, if we go about looking at things, even in the way we engage our people, the way Europeans have taught us, we will never hear what's in their hearts. We will never hear what the real issue is. The issue was not that. The root cause of it is you weren't. So what would make you, tell me about a time when you felt comfortable in the building. Tell me about a time, when you felt like no one heard you. Well, no one says anything to me when I come in the building. Now we're getting data. We're getting data. Nobody talked to me when I don't see anything positive about my kids, or I don't see anything about their culture. All of a sudden, because we've done this relationship-based approach, as opposed to the linear approach, now I can hear what's in the hearts of the people I'm trying to help. And what I'm saying is you cannot help people if we do not hear from them because they have the answers. And we've got to become more creative and more culture specific about how we engage our people.
Correct, and asking the right questions for sure. So Dr. Nobles, again, what are your strategies that you want to share here? And please do talk to us about Zola Up and the power of Zola.
Okay, I think I want to do a couple of things. One is that, I want us to accept the reality that the knowing and knowable spirit of our community, and each and every one of us has the genius to create its own medicine. And that while we sometimes think we gotta package something and bring it to them or be on the, no, they know that they need to be activated. And the idea of Zola Up, Zola is a Congo word that means love, but it is not romantic love. Zola is the activating energy that creates self-healing potential. And so when you say Zola Up, or what I've been trying to get people to say is use this, doesn't say hi or goodbye, say Zola up on we. Zola up on we, because you're activating the self-healing potential in the molecular structure of our being. So we have to understand the science, and it's not spirituality in terms of religion, it is physics, it is energy. And so we should be able to rescue the language that does that. See, spirituality is the technology of spiritness. So we got to master our own technology, and Zola does some of that. The other thing is I would give as a hands-on possibility is that we created at the beginning of this pandemic, we created while sheltering in place, an interactive family workbook that creates exercises that family can do together to do Zola, to activate their own self-healing potential. And I would offer that to our listeners to look at that, to interrogate that, to use it in your family, in your lodge, in your Sora, in your fraternity, whether we gather together. Because that's one way to, again, we're talking about activating our intrinsic self-healing potential. We have the capacity to be what? Just as a scab, a cut will form a scab, and the scab will take all the cellular structure to re-knit itself. That's intelligence. We have a spirit is knowing and knowable. And the third thing I would suggest, and I do believe this, that we can reach down to our own wisdom traditions and pick up models that have been useful for us. In our tradition, there was something called the Moko Jumbi. Moko Jumbi is the stilt walker. And Western frame has made the stilt walker something you bring out for entertainment when you're having carnival. So the kids are fascinated by the people walking on these big long stilts. But the Moko Jumbi was in our tradition a manifestation of a spirit being that, because of its height, could see evil coming. And because of its height, could see what medicine needed to be brought to the community. The two legs of the Moko Jumbi was the technology used to satisfy our dilemma. I take that idea and frame that there are two tasks that we need to engage in all the time, whether we're dealing with the self-help tradition that was talked about, we're dealing with the activism that's current now. There are two tasks that we must always address, almost use as lenses on our glasses that we filter through. The one task is an important one. It is the decolonization of the African mind. That's Amen. That's one leg of the Moko Jumbi, the decolonization of the African mind. And the second task, the second leg of the Moko Jumbi, is the affirmation of being African. Those are two big, major tasks, but they can be broken down real clearly. In the affirmation of African being, we should invite ourselves and our people to do four things. Struggle to understand what it means to be spirit, not to be physically human. What does it mean to be spirit? Second is to engage in both the visible and invisible realms of reality. Don't get spooked by the invisible. The third is to honor the primacy and the paramount of the feminine. See, their stuff has made us think that there's this gender clash of masculine and physical. No, Africa teaches me that we have to honor the feminine. Honor the feminine as primary and paramount. And the fourth one is to enhance our understanding of the sacredness of being spirit. Our children should grow up, walk around saying, I am divine. Mm-hmm. I am divine. I've taken what Naeem did with me one time. He introduced me as Wade and Dim out in California doing this and that. And I heard the dim, and my Western mind said, oh, Naeem with his southern lips can't say them. He was saying dim. But in actuality, the ancestors were telling me, Naeem was sending me a message that dim means divine energy made manifest. Y'all in dim, you a divine energy made manifest. So how do we take that, Give that to our community. Now you go make some medicine. You go solve a problem. You go deal with the school board. You see, so the one leg of the Moko Jumbi is to affirm African being. The second leg of the Moko Jumbi is to decolonize the African mind. And I have steps for that I've thought about for a while. Because, you know, part of my coming from heaven was to think. So I'm gonna stay in my lane as a thinker. Part of this decolonized African mind is the big one. How do we dismantle the edifice of Western white hegemony? It is everywhere. When people go write a play and take their script to Hollywood to get it made a movie, it is couched in the hegemony of white supremacy. When I go decide to start my little business, I'm doing my entrepreneurial stuff. I got my entrepreneurial stick on. We don't dismantle the white supremacy. We create businesses that are just as avaricious and just as vicious as white folks. The second one is to deconstruct the implicit privilege of white thought. I want to hold that up. There's an implicit privilege we give, we who are the thinkers, an implicit privilege we give to white thought. How do we deconstruct that? The third one for decolonizing the African mind is to disrobe the false image of the white aesthetic. Slow that back up and come back to you. To disrobe the false image of the white aesthetic. Everything that is beauty and joy is framed in the image of whiteness. We got to disrobe that. We got to take the king's cloth off. And the third one is to challenge this singular materialist ontology. Automatically see things as linear polarities, male, female, white, black, right, wrong, dark, what. So we got to do something with that, challenging that singular materialist ontology. So I could take these now and recast them in user-friendly language, and then give that as the, what do I want to call it, as the quality control instrument. We could have quality control on blackness. All blackness ain't quality, all quality. In fact, and Nkrumah says that when you have a quantitative change, there's a qualitative difference. And so we got a lot of folk getting quantitative changes, and now we're on the precipice of having a, quote, quantitative change in the new normal post-corona, but the quantitative change is not going to make a qualitative difference if we don't insert the decolonization of the African mind and the affirmation of African spirit. We are spirit beings. We are not spiritual. Spiritual is the technology of the spirit. You see my language here? We have technology. Yes. One big technology we have is called voodoo. One big technology we have is called Ifa. So we can look at those they mislamed as spiritual system and see those as technologies to make the spirit do what it do. Make the spirit do what it do. So I would think that we could begin to talk about inviting our people, ourselves, to engage in some old-fashioned medicine making. What's going to go into the pot? How long is the pot going to be cooked? How long, and what's going to be the time? What's going to be the cooling time before the pot can be used? We should be engaging in that kind of thought in practice.
Ooh, ashe. Knowledge is being dropped. I'm running out of paper for keeping notes. I certainly hope others have been able to track this for themselves in their own work. I want to build upon this idea too of quality control of Blackness and invite our people to let go of the question, do you have a Black therapist? Please let that go. That's the wrong question. Going back to something that Dr. Joy said, it's all about the right question. The question really is, whatever mental health services you're about to bring me, what does it have to do with understanding the impact of systemic racism, more specifically this idea now that we're embracing the savagery of white supremacy, and how is it going to activate and illuminate my Blackness? Because much of whatever these symptoms are I'm bringing you, may it be depression, anxiety, whatever, we want to beg the question. It has something to do with the madness in which we are exposed to. Our behaviors are normal reactions to abnormal situations. If we have been disconnected from our own Black brilliance, our own culture, our own wisdom, then that is part of the pathology, if you will, for whatever behaviors are emerging. So there lies the answer. So whoever this mental health professional is, or whoever they think they is, if they can't address that question, wrong space, keep moving, or demand it, that they need to bring in those of us who are dedicating our work, our life, our passion to illuminating the goodness of our Blackness through the knowledge that's been dropped here today. I also want to say too, in this idea of Zola up on we, and going back to what Brother Jerome said earlier around the Black self-help, we have to give a shout out to the work that's being done through the emotional emancipation circles. When I want to appreciate the Community Healing Network and Sister Enola Aird, who came to ABSI and said, how do we create a curriculum, if you will, a way to empower our people to do their own healing as a community when we talk about the lie of white supremacy and the lie of Black inferiority. So the emotional emancipation circles are now happening all around the world. And again, I want to say too that you should be seeing a handout that our team is placing both on a Zoom call as well as in Facebook that will allow you to be in touch with this in the spirit of Zola up on we. We are also launching Zola Mondays that we would invite all of us to be part of. I do want to give a shout out to the work of our dear brother Kevin Coakley, who now is hosting a Black psychology blog through Psychology Today. So in the spirit of our elder who has transitioned, Dr. Joseph White, it's important for us to give this information back to our people so our people can digest it and use it. And it's important for us to learn from and engage with the wisdom keepers in our community. So this is what we're wanting to do here with the Association of Black Psychologists and our other Black organizations represented here, not only Black Psychiatrists of America and the Black Social Workers, but a shout out again to Baba Leonard, who convenes the Black Family Summit, which is Black leadership from 40 plus organizations. We have, quote, been working together, but I do think it's time now, as I've spoken about many times, for us to have a strong Black collective so this becomes a unifying force to be reckoned with, a village to hold all of us. I also want to say, too, as I get ready to turn this over to our dear brother Ujima to take us home and bring us towards the end of our conversation today, that you do not have to be a psychologist to be a member of the Association of Black Psychologists. You just have to be clear about locating who you are in Black psychology. We must know who we are and whose we are in order to keep moving forward. So I want to thank the panelists, my family, my Jegnas, the scholar warriors, for taking time today and being in this deep thought conversation with us. I want to honor each and every one of you who chose to take this time as well too, to take this. This is now our charge. Baba Nobles has said to us many times, we did what we needed to do, meaning the starting of all of these organizations. Their question now is, now what you gonna do? So the charge has been given to this next generation of scholar warriors. It's on us to do what we need to do from here. So again, thank you all for this conversation. We'll turn it over to our dear brother Ujima, who's going to give us a few more announcements as we close out with our drumming. Ujima?
Thank you very much, Dr. Jackson, and thank you to all of the panel members. It's somewhat challenging when we want to give hand claps, but we can't because we're virtually. But I think for those that may be on the Zoom, we can do a hand clap. To thank all of the presenters, the power, the wisdom, and the knowledge that has been shared during this time period. Just as Dr. Jackson has said, that we have a variety of programs that are being offered through the Association of Black Psychologists, as well as NABSW. And I just wanted an opportunity just to show that for those of you that may not have seen it on Facebook or on Twitter or on the other accounts, so that you can take a quick peek at it. And this is some of that particular information. For most of you, the census is a critical part that we should all be participating in. It really allocates funding and resources as well as national and political representation So when we don't participate, we are abdicating money that could go to other communities outside of our own. So I really want to stress to everyone that's listening to this particular opportunity to really complete the census. Also, keep in mind they will now be ending this a month earlier than what was originally intended. So this will be stopping sooner. So it really is incumbent upon everyone to work and to complete the census. And you can simply go to 2020census.gov and then you complete it. It takes under 10 minutes with 8 questions that you would need to do to complete that. So do keep that in mind. And then there are hosts of other resources that again are listed on our website as well as our Facebook page and our Twitter and Instagram sites. But as some of the people that spoke earlier today or participated, you'll see Dr. Robbins Austin and her information on here as well, in addition to a variety of other organizations that tap into. And going back to Zolo Mondays and other opportunities that we have within the association. Also, I want to make sure that everyone is aware we will be going into our fourth Ujima collaboration, which will be on Saturday.
Brother Yuma, my apologies for interrupting. Just while you have this up, because I just want to underscore the National Association of Black Social Workers Community Resource Center. That has been the space that we have been trying to pull everything in for everything Black during the midst of the COVID. There's information there located by state as well as a national level. So even the booklet that Baba Nobles talked about, the sheltering in place, that's listed there. All of the statement papers that we've been doing to ground us culturally as we deal with these multiple traumas are listed there. And another shout out too for the family care, community care, self-care toolkit. This is intentional for not only activating Zola up in our communities, but it is a tool that if you are in fact dealing with a mental health provider who doesn't appear to understand your reality, feel free to share that with them because it's meant to be a tool to help them figure out how to talk about the realities of what's happening. So again, forgive me for interrupting, but I just wanted to make sure I highlighted those pieces.
No problem. Thank you very much. And for our next Ujima collaboration, it will take place on Saturday, September the 12th at 12:30 again. And this will focus on the intersection of Black, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, sex, Black Lives Matters, and the pandemics. So we really are bringing together to understand how do individuals that identify as GLBTQ are impacted not only with Black lives, but also with the pandemics of white supremacy, as well as with COVID-19 and meeting at the intersection. We will have 4 dynamic presenters that will come from both the National Association of Black Social Workers and the Association of Black Psychologists. Those presenters will be Dr. Shirley Better, Dr. Brenda Ingram, Dr. Amory Robinson, and Dr. Jeffrey Gardier. So we hope that you will be able to join us again on Saturday, September the 12th, starting at 12:30. We will have flyers out hopefully within the next week, and we will be offering CEs for that opportunity as well. I think those are all the final announcements that I have at this particular time. Again, it has been an absolute honor to sit amongst the genius that we've experienced over the past 3.5 hours. And I want to, again, thank all of the panelists as well as Dr. Theopia for moderating this. You certainly could see her enthusiasm for this opportunity based upon how she was gregariously inviting and welcoming people into the conversation, as well as really pulling us to task to see what we can do as we've now been charged from these panelists to move forward in a positive direction to support and help all of our community. So to take us out, we will have Barbara Cedric Wade.
But before you do that, can we please have the information about getting the CEs?
Well, so this is Dr. Jackson. So Dr. Edwin Nichols, as soon as this call is over, those who have registered for CEs will receive an email that has the evaluation connected to it. You'll complete the evaluation and then send that back in, and you will receive your certificate. So that is forthcoming. But again, before we bring in our closing, I will be remiss if I did not give each panelist no more than 2 minutes to give closing comments so it can be right on point to close out with our drumming. And I know Dr. Newton wants to share an event that's coming up for she and Dr. Noble. So again, each panelist will have 1 to 2 minutes to give closing remarks. What do you want to say to the people to take home? Let's start with Dr. Nobles.
Thank you. I want to say that I ask people to each one be a vocal jumbi, and to recognize that the savagery of white supremacy is an airborne virus, and that we should therefore social distance ourselves from white supremacy and recognize that many people are asymptomatic in their white supremacist attitude. Wash your minds frequently. Wash your minds frequently and build up your immune system with African thought.
Thank you, Baba Nobles. Dr. Newton, Nana Newton?
You really don't want me to come behind that.
You're going to be all right.
I totally agree with that prescription, 1000%. But I just wanted to take a minute to notify our listeners that Dr. Nobles, Professor James Smalls, and Professor Hunter Adams will be conducting a webinar that I will be moderating on September the 18th on African sacred science. So people can join us for that at docpatnewton@gmail.com. DOCPATNEWTON@gmail.com, and I'll send them out the details. Thank you.
And if you be sure to send us that flyer, Dr. Newton, we will also post it through our social media. Our team is phenomenal for sure. Brother Jerome?
I'd like to thank everybody. But yes, I think that using the metaphor from Wade Noble's famous essay on Black families, African root, American fruit, I think we should take the best of our root and the best of our fruit and move forward in a way that's loving, spiritual, and spirited. Also, I want to make sure that we understand that the personal is political. And although we didn't create this hell on earth, we are responsible also in getting out of this hell. I want to leave you with that. Ashe.
Beautiful, beautiful. Sister Joy, come on, bring it home for us.
Okay. So just a couple of things that I would say is one, I think we have everything we need within us to move forward, to change the trajectory. That's number one. And I wanted to encourage people to tell your children who you are, teach them who they are. And I know that my dear friend Randall Robinson said, you know, the worst thing you can do to a people is to rob them of the memory of themselves. And I think that the answers lie in us being still and knowing and with full confidence. And also, you know, I think it's important for our children and our families to see beauty and love and joy and goodness and to uplift that. And I wanted to end with a wonderful scripture, which says that the Black man is like the pupil of the eye, surrounded by a sea of white, but it is the pupil that contains the sight. It beholds what is before it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Ashe. And so, Brother Cedric, if you want to begin to close us. Beautiful. So peace and blessings, family. Continue to take care of yourselves. Self-care is imperative in this war, and we need each and every one of you. Ashe and goodbye.
Ashe.